6. And approval of the agenda. Anybody want to make any changes?
I'll support.
Okay, thank you. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, we'll move on. Any disclosures of the conflict of interest? Okay. Hearing none, we'll take general public comment. I hope you're here for a specific purpose, both groups, so take it there's no general public comment. Minutes from the April 8th meeting. Any corrections, additions? None?
Move their approval. Support.
There's a motion and a support for the minutes. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, we'll move on. Miles, did you have any communications?
Yeah, we do have one this week actually. The city of East Lansing sent a communication to all the surrounding municipalities that it share a border with, which includes Bath Township, of their intent to conduct comprehensive planning. They're going at the big picture, I guess, is the name of the plan they're going with, so good branding from East Lansing. So yeah, it's included in the packet. I'm not going to obviously read the whole thing. You guys know what a comprehensive plan is and what they're about to get involved in. So yeah, if you want to be a part of that, I'm sure be on the lookout for public hearings, listening sessions, community input sessions. So
They're already in 40B. Public comment.
all right. Okay, so that's what they're So yeah.
Is that to the end of the process?
This communication towards the end of the process?
The 42-day required public comment is what they're at.
Yeah, typically, it depends on how municipality does it. But typically, they will start their notice for the intent to comprehensive plan once they're already in the formation of the draft. So they won't do it like right when they kick the process off. But they'll do it before the draft has been finalized. That way, edits and things need to be changed. But they, like I said, they typically will wait, just like we're going to wait until we get a draft together. Because why would you take public comment if you don't have anything even in writing yet to comment on? So that it typically happens somewhere in the midpoint of the project.
That comment period's in June 11th.
Okay, according to this, I didn't plug in.
Well, clearly Matt said name ours is bigger and better.
Oh, I love that.
Okay, interesting. Cool. Is that all? Anything else, Miles? Okay, old business, I don't think we had any. New business, I'm asking you folks to, Miles, you want to give us a quick rundown on this?
Yeah, we get to it. All right. I sent out an email today. Sorry if there was any confusion. We did have one typo in the staff report. We said multiple times that intended land use, but we had a placeholder holdover from our template. So I didn't think anyone would get confused, but just on the off chance, I wanted to send out. We are not talking about a service station tonight. We are talking about a proposed, we're calling it a warehouse and storage use, because with the given land uses that are in the district, this is what this is most similar to. Here's kind of an overall site plan of what is being proposed tonight. There's some pictures up there on the board, but this was also included in your packet, provided from the developer to give a concept of what they're looking at. You can kind of see in the back of these units, there's a half bath that they're intending to establish in these, so that would be a toilet, no shower. They'll talk more about it, I'm sure, but that kind of goes in line with probably the demographic and, the type of renter that they'd be seeking to, establish contracts with for these units. This is a good aerial photo that kind of shows the site. I can pull up our Fetch GIS for our imageries from 2019 still. This year, by the way, is an update year, so we're looking forward to getting some new satellite imagery from the county. But this shows a good, aerial view of what the site looks like. You can see what we call, at least in the planning department, the Sunrise Forest building, and then you can see East Lansing storage in the back. You can see this kind of vacant field in the middle. This is on the parcel of Sunrise Forest, so it's all one big parcel. They're not seeking to subdivide the parcel. They're seeking to establish this on the same parcel. We haven't really got into the details of how you guys are going to do ownership. If, the LLC that controls that parcel will be the LLC that controls these. If that LLC will control the land, and these will be leased to another LLC. So we haven't really discussed that yet. In terms of land use policy, it doesn't completely matter in terms of agreements that may need to be established for conditions that can come at a later date. Then it would matter with the entities we're actually dealing with are. We did have a pre-application meeting with the applicant. We talked about a couple of things regarding, a couple of concerns on the site. So, overall setbacks were talked about, which I think did create the impetus to change up the layout a little bit. Talked about drainage, which I think even some of the members here are aware drainage is a concern on the site. So we dealt with that conversation quite a bit. The developers probably have some input that they'd like to say about drainage because they know it's this body's concern as well. We talked about lighting. We talked about parking. Kind of went down just a list of all of the various things. We talked about access. Access has been one of those issues on this site. Kind of a contentious issue even at some points, how access is given to this site. And then how NDOT wanted, additionally when Sunrise Forest was made, and NDOT was actually the agency that required the change to their drive, which I think the township and the development both agreed wasn't the ideal drive scenario, but nonetheless required by NDOT, so it's one of those things. So that's kind of the site we're looking at. It's a development district, this district, the zoning district is a development district. There's an access management overlay district in this area, which basically mirrors the standards that were set by NDOT at the time when the access management district was established. I don't know if we've looked back on that to update it with NDOT's current standards. I would assume we haven't. But because of this adjacency to 4078 and Saginaw Highway, which are NDOT controlled, obviously if and when this gets sent out for agency review, one of those agencies will be NDOT, one of those agencies will be Eagle, just because Eagle also has some drain stuff in the ground, so they're going to have to get approval too. In terms of zoning review, we gave it our preliminary review, just a 5,000-foot quick looking for red flags review at the pre-application meeting. But now with me stepping into the zoning administrator role, I will conduct a full zoning review and provide that as a part of my staff report, just like any other agency review you receive in the staff report. So kind of look out for that. I guess this will be the first one where I'm kind of stepping up to that, and hopefully be able to give you guys more thorough zoning reviews, which I think having one of those things could have been frustrating for this body. That's all the input I got, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Do you gentlemen want to say anything about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Should I take the podium?
Sure. Absolutely.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Luke Kirshner. I work for MX Development. I'm one of their project managers. As you guys know, we completed the retail center there in 2023, as well as the storage facility to the north. Our goal of this project is to kind of bridge the gap between the retail and storage by developing this middle area. It's about 2 acres or so. And our intended use is kind of a larger storage unit style development geared more for small businesses, people that want to store a boat, ATV, whatever it may be. Just a larger space, a bit more convenient for more consistent and regular access. So we're looking at doing about 21 to 22,000 square feet. It's going to depend on what the engineers say we can do with the site. As you've seen, it's not a very large area. There's an existing road there. We've got some great considerations and a lot of stormwater issues to resolve out there. So it's going to be somewhere in the ballpark of 21 to 22,000 square feet, about 18 units, 1,200 to 1,500 square feet per unit. And these units are going to be essentially a large storage unit with a half bathroom, taller ceiling clearance, about 16 feet. That's our target. We're going to have a larger overhead door, similar like a garage door to the operator. That way you're not going to bend over, roll the thing up, and roll back down when you want to get into the unit or bring things in and out. There's also also going to have a just a typical entry door for easier access if you're not moving things in or out. Half bathroom, as I said. 8-unit climate control. And that's the rundown of what the units are going to be like on the inside. Now, on the outside of the site, we have, as you guys all know, stormwater issues out there. And our goal with this development is to really resolve the issues we have out there on the site. We've done a lot with the storage facility to try and mitigate our stormwater issues out there, but we really need to put a new retention area in, run some underground drainage, a couple catch basins in the street, all things that we can address pretty easily while working on this development. Some grading work will also help with that a good bit. As far as landscaping, we plan on planting along building perimeters, as well as doing plenty of screening along the Hospital Drive there, which is to the east of 7733. So that's kind of in short what we have in mind for this development. Is there any questions or concerns that you guys have at this time, based on what I told you?
Served by sewer or something.
It's septic, so that'll be interesting. We're not going to have floor drains in the units because it's going to attract a automotive repair use, which we don't want because, oil going to a septic field, one, ruins the septic field, two, massive environmental concerns. So kind of steer it clear of floor drains in units. And with the 18 bathrooms, we'll see what the health department has to say about our sizing. We may have to get rid of a few bathrooms in the units if we don't have the area required for a septic field or do some sort of engineered system.
You guys have an engineered, just a full facts, you guys have an engineered system for the Sunrise Forest building right now?
Yeah.
And are not intending to tie into that engineered system, that's actually an established new system?
Yeah, we'd like to get a new system. We looked into it a bit. The tanks for the existing system are at capacity for its current load, so we just, if we wanted to connect it when we're going uphill to it, so we're going to pump the septic uphill, which if that were to fail, would create some issues in the units. Then also the cost of bringing those tanks out, maybe tanks in, you might as well just do a new drain field, assuming we can fit it. So that's kind of our biggest concern with the site right now. Other than that, storm drainage, like I said. But yeah.
With the volume of units, driveway, just coverage, that's a lot of water. Where are you planning to run it? You have enough problems down below with the water problems, even with the drains you put in.
Yeah, so our plan is going to be that green space up there, it's going to be detention. We're going to try and squeeze more detention to the west of that drive there, kind of behind the dumpster corral. Then we'll have all of our building gutters running underground at a fairly low pitch, so that the water's not moving super fast. Catch basins in the road there, and the goal here is to outlet everything into that top left corner. There is a swale area there with some riprap and vegetation. So if we can get the grade level out of it, where our slope isn't crazy, so we're not just dumping water down there, it should flow nicely. We'll have to run some drainage counts, but that's our plan right now.
One thing just to help you with your question that they brought up in the pre-app meeting that's probably important, can you guys talk about tilting the site?
Yeah. So when we grade the site, we're going to try and raise this area up a bit, level this area out, and have it slightly sloping down towards the western site boundary. That'll allow us to have anything that's not collected in the catch basins or gutters to flow down towards that western boundary, and it'll be a shallow swale to pick up any additional storm water and just transport it back into the swale that's on the storage facility.
First swale right now.
Along the
Hey, Luke. Yeah, I can clarify. In the previous in the storage facility project, we have a large detention area in the very back, the very northmost corner of the site. The capacity of that pond is large enough to support any additional volume of water we're going to move from this site there. The big issues at East Lansing Storage so far have been related to water that isn't being directed where it needs to be to end up there. So the measures that we're attempting to take on this middle site are to stop any water from coming across that grassy area today it's showing up in the front of East Lansing storage and trying to find its way around it. So get it underground as quickly as we can. Use some swales, detention areas, slow it down on its way, on its path, its ultimate path to that pond to the north.
And then take the existing ground of surface stuff to the northwest.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, just for the planning commission, so you guys have a full picture of the site. Right now, there's an open drain, that larger swale we're talking about, that extends to about here. And if they do what they're talking about here, they'd be north of where you can see the footprint of, this is building A for East Lansing Storage, their parcel ends about here. So what they talked about, at least in the pre-app meeting, is tilting the site, this site, tilting it to the west, which they'll make a smaller swale here, and then that will basically get all the site over and down and directed here. Hopefully, and at least the goal, and we'll see what the Duran counts and the agency reviews say, obviously, but the goal would be to try to engineer so the water doesn't even flow north. It flows to the west and then north along the swale. All right, I'll stop talking, I'm sorry.
Because if it flowed north, it'd flow right into the current.
It would be, if it's just sheet flow north, that would be problematic.
Miles, can you pull that map back up really quick? Some of you gentlemen were at Mr. Osborne's property a few years ago. I just want to explain what measures have been taken since that meeting on the East Lansing storage site. My reach is not going to be great. When we originally designed the site, Slicer Group actually designed it, and I wish I wanted to spend money to see them, but I didn't. We've installed a trench drain here, so any of the water that flows down this impermeable asphalt driveway is collected in a trench drain that pipes out into a new swale that runs along the perimeter of the property. And it keeps all of this water that used to come down from this site, it would come down the center of the driveway, split, go around the building. A lot of it would flow off into Mr. Hosford's property, which he was obviously fairly cross about, and we respected that. So he actually helped us install a new curb on this side to keep the water on our property. And then we dug a new swale that runs down the perimeter of his property here that gets us back, and that water ends up in this pond now. And then we also put in a temporary retention area here to stop any more water. And we've completely mitigated all water issues on East Lansing storage. Our biggest concern, though, is making sure that we future-proof this area the best we can to get this water off of this site, not have it go that way, and have it end up in that pond that has the volume to carry it. That's one of the long perspectives.
You're pushing a lot of water
Yeah.
that you had issues with.
Correct.
back to that.
And it all flows to East Lansing storage, so it was a challenging problem to solve. I ruined multiple pairs of shoes standing out there last summer, just standing in the rain, watching the water move, trying to make sure we got it.
Is that detention pond on their property?
On that property.
Is that MDOT's, or that's it?
No, that's MDOT. And I don't believe you guys are sending any water to
Nope.
MDOT, nor will MDOT take any water.
Nope. And to answer your question, one of the biggest reasons this project is important to us is you asked, will the sites be sold or condoed or in any way not owned by BTEG? BTEG will retain ownership of this whole site. So all the access agreements that we currently have apply for this as well.
Well, that makes it cleaner from the agreement side on my end, so. Not that I'm not willing to do whatever, but less work is nice.
When you say the site, is this entire site under one ownership then?
No. Two ownership groups.
The two parcels have two different owners.
Correct.
Yeah. What was the parcel split? You're supposed to think, B and C?
Yeah, all forward on one patch, just so you can see the parcels. Again, the aerial imagery is old, so kind of, blame the county, that's what I do. So you can kind of see Ray, or Commissioner Story, sorry, you can kind of see that, let me draw here real quick. The Sunrise Forest building it's at a scale of something like that. Their parking area is something like that, and then the East Lansing Storage Building A is right there. And so the parcel split kind of happens right there. And this is the area we're talking about, which Matt is saying represents the max Maxium is saying that this will be under the same ownership as the owner of this parcel, which is under, according to FetchGIS, this. And according to FetchGIS, this is under this LLC ownership. So two different parcels, two different LLCs. But one shared drainage system, which when we, if you, just to jog everyone's memory, if you remember what there was a number of amendments that came over time with these, we established agreements between these two entities for things like that drive, for things like drainage. So, with the, really, this is, they're not actually looking to do site plan review here. This is really an amendment to Sunrise Forest, the site plan. And when they amend that, you know, at that time, if any new agreements or anything have to be established, or any new conditions have to be established, you know, we'll amend that. And then the site plan is being amended and SUG is being requested.
Are you going to be moving the gate further out to the edge of the property?
So, are you referring to putting a gate
Security gate?
on 7733 down here then?
No, going to East Lansing Storage.
No, we're planning on leaving the gate where it is currently located. We don't have any plans to install an additional gates or fences yet right up there. We actually could put a gate around the new storage development. It's being kind of cumbersome for people going back to the main storage facility. But it's something to consider if it's going to be important to have.
Are you suggesting a night?
Just asking about just looks and so forth.
So all the traffic to East Lansing are going to break through the middle of your story area.
Yeah, that's correct. So we're going to widen this drive to about 28 feet. It should allow for plenty of space for people to move U-Hauls and such to the storage site to the north of it. We'll have some parking to the east of that drive. Those are extra deep spaces. I think those are 20-foot deep spaces right there. But yeah, they'll just drive right up there. And then we're going to turn the road at the top of the site there, because if you've been out there recently, you'll notice that we've got our U-Haul parking and the turning radius to come into the storage site and back behind building A is pretty tight. If you got a trailer or an RV, it's got to be a nightmare. So we want to move that road and make that a much more gentle turning radius there.
I have a question, Miles, before I view. These are going to be large storage units with that facility. Is there any restriction on what they can do in these things? I mean, can they put a car in here and rebuild it in one of these, or?
That's a good question. So one of our main concerns that we talked about in the pre-application meeting that maybe the developer can speak to, that we've had problems with in the past, and this is more of a police and fire problem, is people living in these, and then we gotta get the police out there, or people ODing in these, and then we gotta get the fire department out there. So, we brought that to these gentlemen during the pre-action that we talked about.
So,
Back to the second part of your question.
yeah, so our lease is going to, for people actually living in the units, it's not something that we want, or fire department wants, or you guys want, obviously. So yeah, that's going to be forbidden in our lease. We're going to have on-site security surveillance, which we can grant the police department access to, if they like. We've worked with them at 7755 a lot, had similar issues out there. But we've done a pretty good job of mitigating those issues and resolving them fairly quickly.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get agency review from the police too to talk about that, and it's not unique to this storage site. I mean, we got a couple in the township, and it's just one of those things that come with the territory.
Variation of that same question.
Okay,
So I have a friend who operates a small business, and he runs a facility exactly like this.
it's already becoming popular.
And so, but he has a USDA inspected kitchen in that, and so I guess, you know, conceivably this could be, I don't know how many units there are, but it's basically a whole bunch of small businesses.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the, you know, zoning and, you know, for that. 'Cause when we
Well,
talk
that's
about
what-
storage facility.
Well, that's why we tagged that warehouse use on it, because of their size, we didn't feel like doing just the storage land use was enough. That's why we did storage/warehouse, because we could see that. But with the kitchen, and that brings up an interesting point. And again, this is a use permitted by special use permit. And so, you know, the conditions that could be associated with that special use permit
this body has latitude to recommend to the planning, or, board of trustees, as long as it's within, again, that word nexus of relationship to the use that we're talking about. So, just to reiterate again, like, you couldn't require them to come and, dredge Park Lake. Like, that wouldn't be in the nexus of requirements. But if you were to say something like, there shall be no kitchens established within these units, that's a perfectly legal and fair condition to think about. So maybe, and that's the kind of point of doing introductions, to think about these things over the next couple of weeks and some foreseeable issues you can have, and then, talk to me about it, or, we'll talk about it in the meeting and get conditions that can mitigate those issues. In terms of vehicle, the developer was saying, in terms of automobile reconstruction, that's one of those problematic things that has also happened, not so much in our smaller storages, but I could see being an issue here. Doing, safety through environmental design things, like not allowing drains, I think would be helpful in that respect. Putting conditions would safeguard the township. That would be problematic.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely gonna be okay with people storing vehicles in here, but as far as like, if you're rebuilding your engine or draining oil out into the sink, that's not something we want there, so that could definitely, be something that's outlined in the lease and prohibited.
Yeah, and if they're already doing that, but we just slap a condition on our approval to, cover us as well, I'm sure it wouldn't offend them, and it covers us, and then, if any problematic uses are occurring, then we have a tool in the toolbox.
So going back to drainage, do you have an engineering firm working on this?
So we're using Kempsburg Engineering. They're getting started on their full civil package.
You haven't quite gotten there yet?
Yeah, we have to start.
I mean, these issues should be pretty simple.
They'll work it out with the engineering, tell us if we can't do it, or we can.
You determine if you need a perk or...
We'll definitely need to do a burn test for
Have you
something.
done any borings on the site to determine the subsurface soils?
I've got a few older ones from 2021, and we're getting ready to authorize additional ones to the site, but we should be doing that in the next few weeks. Soils out there are pretty good. We're going to have to probably haul off some of our topsoil because we took some of the leftover soil from excavating out the foundations and just kind of graded it out over that site. So the top layer of soil is probably about 1.5 feet of some clay, some gravel, not great soil. Under that, it's mainly just sandy loam, a little bit of clay in it, but nothing unusual for the area.
Do you guys want to just reiterate for the planning commission what we talked about in the pre-app meeting? You want to talk about signage, lighting, parking?
Yeah. So with signage, we'd like to see small signs that are going on the face of each unit, probably like a 2-foot by 3-foot sign, just some sort of small identifier, as well as a address plaque with a building number on it, just to make deliveries go well. We've had people that have been operating out of the storage facility, and watching deliveries there is pretty funny. The UPS guy has no idea where to go. He's not sure about packages. As far as parking goes, we've got, I think it's 2.6 spaces per unit, which, based on the current use, should make sense. I don't anticipate needing more than that.
And that's what you're showing here in front of these.
Yep, exactly.
So it's like a drive/parking.
Yeah, so we'll be able to park in front of the overhead door, and that'll be a space, like if this is the overhead door, space here. This is the entry door, there'll be another space right there. So about two spaces per unit.
And that's something to ask for concrete, or you guys haven't decided?
We want to make it concrete if we can. It's going to depend on our building method, if we're doing a full foundation wall or just pouring a slab in a building once it's up. If we're just pouring a slab, we'll definitely want to have the slab extend out from the building and do like a concrete style apron there, and then just asphalt for the main drives.
And then lighting.
Lighting, yeah. So we're going to have LED lights inside the units that we're out style, but then outside it'll all be those dark sky compliant light packs just mounted right on the face of the building. So nothing crazy there. Very similar to our storage facility. You guys have seen photos of that at night. It looks great and it doesn't create that much light pollution, which is nice.
You mentioned deliveries. What kind of deliveries are they being made to storage? But
Just
I don't understand why any deliveries being made.
It's a lot of, we have, for example, when there's a beverage distributor operating, they have 5 storage units they're renting from us, so 1,000 storage spaces, and they were paying us an arm and a leg for it instead of just renting a space similar to this. It was mainly just, a small pallet of beverages, or just miscellaneous materials for some sort of plumber, just guys working in his shop, or looking to get things delivered or picked up. Yeah, nothing, not like any sort of loading dock type situation, nothing crazy like that.
There's also a Mac Tools truck owner. So he has an enclosed space in the back, and he's there every day loading his truck up, things like that. It's a big truck to make those turns every day. There's also a bread company that uses it for short-term storage. There's like a lot of these smaller businesses, along with plumbers, electricians, that store stuff, and that space, this size doesn't really exist. Like it's very difficult to find that sub $2,000 a month, show up in the morning, grab your stuff, go type space. That's the predominant user for these.
So you wouldn't anticipate retail activity occurring on this space? No. That would be something that we could add as a contingency.
Nor would we authorize that.
Yeah.
And that has, we did get a phone call about that, not from these gentlemen, but somebody just curious, and I don't even know if it was specific to this store, so I can't remember, it could have been, but, we're like, no, you can't set up a store in the store.
Anything else?
That front open space, the B of D was,
That's where the engineer drain field is right now for Sunrise Forest. That ain't going nowhere.
so that's just gonna stay open space.
Yeah, it's just existing septic field, so.
In the drawing, A and B are going to remain open spaces.
Yeah, those are also reserved areas, so. If you've seen the site, that's like a fairly sloped area, it's not useful for real building much of anything, so we'll just leave this open as reserved field space.
Where would the septic field go for this?
Or E is,
Up top, so with our existing grade right now, it makes the most sense to put the septic field up in this corner or over here. The issue putting it here is that our well for 7755 sits right about there, and we're out within our 75 feet clearance there, so we just can't have a septic field that close to the well for a number of reasons. So that's kind of the best space we've found for it. We may have to install an engineered system to make it fit there. We'll just see how the soil looks when we get a perk test out there.
Both of those locations are probably upgrading to groundwater flow.
Yeah. We'll just see what the whole department says when we go
If
through
you
it.
have a well on site, you should know the geology, make sure you have confining layers between the screening area and your septic system.
You talking about the well on the storage facility or for? Yeah.
Closest well.
Yeah, right there. So I have to look at our grading plan to see where exactly that's falling. Pretty sure.
Where's the well for this site too?
It is all the way down in the southwesternmost corner. Pretty much right on the property line there. Yes, there's about a fall from where that current septic system is. It's that E right there and the well, so we'll have to look at that and make sure that we're not going to have any issues with.
Especially if you do an engineered grading system.
Yeah.
The health department's been getting pretty ruthless with those well permits, so I'm sure we'll take a look at it. Or at least that's what we've been hearing from the home builders in the township, so.
yeah, I can understand that. This seems like kind of an odd use for this property, given its location, to the freeway entrance and the number of cars that go by there.
Yeah, so we got approached by a Dollar General, that was our other potential use, and we weren't huge on it. We've been seeing this is a very popular growing use for space, just kind of a larger storage type building, and it's relatively inexpensive to build. right now, so what we think is going to be the best piece for the site.
The two main drivers for the contractor garage model are proximity to a big box retail store like a Home Depot, so that's one. And the other one is highway access that's connecting to a major metropolitan area. So this is really a good funnel point for Landsberg, Perry, like anything Metro Flint, anything from the north. Like if you're coming into Lansing to work and you don't want to haul your trailer every day with all your stuff, this site is perfectly suited to allow contractor easy access into town, where he picks his stuff up in a safe, secure location, and then goes to work, puts it back before he goes home, and then goes back home. So those are kind of the two big driving factors for anything that like trades business model, which we're talking, there's 18 of these. I'm not at all concerned that we'll find 18 people that want to do that, but there's probably some guys that want to store a nice, expensive boat too, or just a place to get away from home. You'll find those guys too. Or women, actually. My wife would probably love to get out of the house, not deal with me.
Well, the other thing I would be concerned about if you're appealing to tradespeople is this driveway layout is not going to be very semi-friendly.
The scale is difficult to understand. Like, to Luke's point, the normal driveway, I don't believe, is 28 wide. So this is wider, and then also the depth of each space is contemplated for like a 3/4 ton truck.
Right.
And also, I just don't suspect there will be a ton of use for exterior parking, though Luke made a good point earlier. You can park inside while your employees can park in the building while they're working. If you leave the shop to do it.
Right, but if you were to have a semi-delivery, there's really no place for it to turn around. And you're certainly not going to back out on the Saginaw.
No. They currently do that for Dunkin' deliveries, it's semi-delivery, and the same thing at ELS. There's a couple of deliveries that come in semis, and they turn around at ELS at the storage facility.
Interesting. So you've market researched and you feel...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, essentially, there's not much of a market out there for this type of product. Here it is. If you look at like Traverse City, places like that, this is huge. But there's really kind of a gap in what's available out there for a tenant. If you're looking for a small space, your options are either a 3,000 square foot building with a 5-year lease or renting 5 storage units, both of which kind of have their downsides. So this is kind of a diversity gap between functionality and affordability for small businesses as they grow.
Are you going to have an electrical distribution panel in each unit then?
Every unit. Stealing your thunder, Luke, so keep going.
How are they heated climate control?
Yeah, so we contemplated doing unit heaters with a split cooling system, and right now that seems to be the best option. So just a large gas-fired unit heater connected to the ceiling, and then a smaller split system just for the occasional cooling. But the main thing will be heat, so we want to make sure we've got proper heating in these units with those big overhead doors. If you open those in the winter, it's going to really heat the space quickly.
Because if you have geothermal, you'll have to access unless it's a closed loop system.
Oh, no. Yeah, we just contemplated doing gas for now, but that would be another potential option.
I was just making sure that you weren't dumping more water.
Besides a little bit of condensation from the slits, but that'll be that.
Right, but if you don't have a closed loop, then you're dumping water.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can talk about process real quick. If you guys are done with questions. So everyone's on the same page. I would suspect that we probably see this at our next meeting, due to the turnaround time. You guys gotta get us a full set of plans. We gotta kick out an agency review. It's a special use permit, so, we'll have to have a noticing period for a public hearing. So probably not the next meeting, but maybe the meeting after. This could be potentially bad. Obviously, I'll work with the chair and the vice chair on timing and agenda. But yeah, so what we'll be looking for from the developers from the planning department side is getting that full set of plans and working with you guys to get the agency agency review kicked out. Like I said, you know, just because of proximity to the MDOT and some EGLE regulation that's in the area, a little bit of a more built-out agency review. So, yeah, will be fun.
Always is.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I just have one comment. So when I'm looking at this picture, it's the upper picture, I can imagine that sitting along the driveway where that would run off. You said it's all captured off your roof and put into a drain, correct?
Yeah, so all of the gutters in the building are going to terminate. They're going to run to probably move to 6-inch corrugated pipes down the ground, and the gutters just go right into that, and then all that's going underground and out towards the northwestern corner of the site.
Because I can see that'd be a lot going on top.
Oh,
If that wasn't captured.
It's also,
I know you said you was going to, but
it's a major trip and fall hazard for us as well. If we have just sheet draining out of that concrete, that freezes and someone falls and is injured.
I was thinking out the back also, you know.
Yeah, that'll be all the way around, just all the gutters are underground.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Matt, where's Barry the Bagel at this time?
That's the question of the day.
Oh, it's going to open.
No.
It's going to open. I don't know when. It's going to open.
You got Duncan to give up?
It's doing well. I sat in a 10-minute line there at 3:15 today.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, the other tenants seem to be doing okay. She's just, I love Stacy. She's a little out of her depth. But we have since started working with her to help her get a plan case finished. Because I wanted to.
Well, yeah.
See the Facebook messages and I'm like, just want to say something, but I can't. It's not mine.
All about cash flow. Okay, anybody got anything else? Thanks for coming, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Sorry about the wait. Sheriff, we could just take a quick
Yeah.
5 minutes to get set up.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Great night, thank you guys.
Yep, take your phone break. Sit up.
Do you guys, just want, okay, I just want to say we'll take 5 and over.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll just take time.
Okay.
We'll be casual on it.
Okay.
You okay? Too bad. Harsh.
Okay. I already got it.
Upset about you.
No, you're fine.
You have to take the casualty, you know. Big on formalities.
Were you?
For a while, yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I've seen it kind of like ran over conferences and stuff.
Nice to get your email.
Well, I was correct about that one day when we had that Zoom meeting. And it was like Bobby there, we screwed on Zoom, and Bobby's like, sorry, that's last yesterday. And you know, he does it great. He's taken like several sections in my own classic car. You know, how his car status.
Oh, okay. I've been wanting to pull out. There was cars lined up, so they
Trying to make sure everyone's paid.
and they were getting
You
wanted to make a left turn. You were screwed. Everything you could do was do like cheer on your walk up and down right now. And that was it. So there was already a traffic stop.
And you add more retail.
Well, even this really close.
Yeah,
They're gonna be there at 6 or 7 or 8.
And that doesn't mean like a township engineer, like, yeah, that's my application, super reliable. Like, he'll talk about all his stuff, and then, they have a sewer laterals, make sure that it's coordinated, and so they want to slap it on. And then it goes back.
Few months, and then I have to go back, would it be good for the winter, because it was no summer. Then, during the summer,
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, no, was it too much of a little bit more thorough sewer, or was it trying to work with,
yeah, there was sheets of sidewalks,
all the positions
the whole yard.
we did sell for.
I hope summer's full. Yeah, because that happened to me several years ago. That's been, that's okay. Hope that was part of the contract.
Some developers are
Sidewalks. I remember a lot of people got upset. Got a good job.
Yeah. One of these guys, guys are yesterday,
They did, I
this location has a lot.
just, because it was pretty tight here. It didn't pass. You didn't get paid and you get docked as well. Because you got to tear it back out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Gives the ball.
That's right.
Every other thing,
Well, that's one goal.
Yeah.
Just floor ticket.
Fair process.
You gotta open
Open and fair process, and that's what did it, right?
Transparency and, like my buddy, he was a planner for the city of Warren at the time, they got sued, they got 3 places available, they got sued by 2 different groups, and they should have sued the lawsuit over a notice technicality. They didn't do the something properly.
And then sometimes,
So,
since you
it seems a nightmare, yeah.
you gotta be real, I don't know.
Bureaucracy.
All right, John.
We all set?
My camera will be all better because we are recording the meeting and the camera's right there, so you're in focus. If you sit down, we wouldn't see them.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good to see you all. Thank you for inviting us in. I'm Harmony Gamazo with MSU Extension. This is Emma Borgens, a student research assistant at MSU School of Planning and Design. And tonight's topic, roles and responsibilities of the Planning Commission. It's going to be interactive. It's not just going to be me lecturing, although, and I'm going to be lecturing fast. I really only have about an hour, I believe. Yeah. So, you'll have my information, my email at the end as well. I'm always available if questions and concerns come up tonight. Maybe a few nights from now, you think about something that didn't quite hit you, but I'm always available to chat and address questions. Tonight, we'll talk about the big picture, why we plan, the responsibilities of a commission, and the roles of each member, including the roles of the public. And then I'll also talk a bit at the end about some of your more foundational documents to look at for guidance. And we'll talk a bit about county planning at the very end as well, and how that role plays into the work that you do. This circle you see here is taken from the American Planning Association, but it really tells the whole story, I believe, of why we plan. And that is because there are all these trends happening in the world that we're trying to make sense of and help guide our community through these trends. Societal, technological, political, economic, environmental trends. These are all things happening actively in the world around us, in our community. And it's our job as commissioners and professional planners to identify these issues and trends that come along that can impact what happens in our communities at the very micro scale. This helps us to be future ready. As the verb planning to plan, we're trying to be ready for the future, and having an up-to-date plan and a planning commission helps us prepare for that future. And it also leads to a way to formalize the needs of your community. And when I say formalize, I'm thinking in terms of policy, master plan, zoning ordinance. You are formalizing the needs of your community through those documents and through the work that you do. Also, the big picture of why we plan. There's a relationship between the places in our community, to the people, to the businesses, to the growth, and it's a cycle. And all these elements of a community rely on one another for growth and for planned growth is a better way to put it. So as planning commissioners, we always have an eye on our community, the places within it that we want to plan for, and the people who are living here and their needs. We know at Extension, in all of our work across the state, that there are a few ways that communities define themselves across Michigan as being a quality place. So this is from our research and visits and relationships we have in various sized communities across the state. We've basically seen communities define themselves as a quality place if they have a lot of housing options for the people who live there, if they have different options for transportation, thinking beyond the automobile, and also thinking about mixed uses, allowing people to live, work, and play in the same district, same neighborhood block, same area, as a choice. This is an allowable choice for people to have that. And these items can be found in urban and suburban places, so it can be a mixture. And in the rural places across Michigan, our team has seen communities define themselves as a quality place when they have natural areas that are planned for and preserved, green areas, blue areas, quiet areas, and productive areas. So we see these trends and needs and items across our community being planned for, and they are part of the big picture of why planning commissions are doing the work they do. And you can view a community, your community, along what we call in the planning world as a transect. And it's just a look at how to organize the landscape into different zones. So some land uses work better in some zones versus others. So as officials and staff, we don't get overwhelmed with all the various types of land uses in our community. We know how to organize them and where they might fit best. We've got natural zones that are undisturbed. Undisturbed is the key word there. It's very rare, but they are in Michigan. We see a lot of rural zones, right? Some single-family residential happening, large parks, and working lands. Then as we move towards the right, we get more and more urbanized, suburban areas with single families and mixed use and things like that, some commercial, and general urban and urban center and urban core. So your community might not have all of these types of landscapes, but in your region you certainly do, outside that townships, boundaries. Anyway, just one way to look nonprofit for the township. The work we did didn't really pay for itself across the township hall. But what it did bring was this whole entire list of benefits to the community, which is what we rely on with good planning and appropriate zoning. The work that we do in the planning department, as a planning commission, in administering your zoning ordinance, you're avoiding wasteful spending, you're contributing to development, you're looking for orderly growth, you're protecting property values, you're promoting fair, equitable enforcement of that ordinance, preventing blight, promoting public health. So all of these benefits are tied into planning and zoning, and the work that we do as a planning commission. Except to remind myself. And thinking beyond the township boundaries, this is a regional map, kind of an artistic one, but there are 14 economic regions across the whole state. Bath Township is part of Tri-County Planning Regional Commission with 3 counties, Eaton, Ingham, and Clinton. And the extension team includes this slide in here in this picture because all of the work you're doing inside the township has ripple effects through the entire region for growth, for development, for preservation, for conservation, all of those planning elements tied together regionally. So keep a regional look across the work that you do and coordinate when you can. We always say to think regionally and even you think statewide as well. Some words of inspiration. Any questions about that big picture? Done with my first section now, the big picture, highway plan. Any thoughts? Questions there? Surprises? Experiences that you have with that? You'd like to share?
So about 95% of what we do is site plan review.
Yeah, administering the ordinance, absolutely. The other 5% is master planning. Or would you say, what's the other 5% then?
Arguing.
Arguing.
I would say this body's pretty
Debating.
important in the drafting of ordinances. I feel like we're pretty often looking at ordinances themselves. In my experience, this community's in the ordinance more than other communities I've worked for. So, and as we talked about in our meeting, we have the comp process coming up soon, so that'll be interesting.
Absolutely, right? So deliberating, reviewing the work that you do. Those are your other words for arguing.
I'll go back to the slide that you had on planning. It was,
The planning benefits?
no, it was all the element, that circular graph.
Oh, sure. The trends or the economic place talent? This one?
The one before, this one's societal trends, technological trends. And I personally feel we don't spend enough time thinking about these things. And I might be wrong here. So sometimes I get frustrated that we get bogged down in site plan review, special use permits. We don't take time to think about what are the needs of our larger area or more energy. So
Big picture items. So going into your master plan update sets the stage for that purpose. Yeah, you're very busy administering the zone ordinance. Okay, special use permit, 1, 2, 3.
I could
Site
bring
plan
up
review.
a
But
lot
yeah,
of
big
times
picture.
when groups here say, we need to think about what we want that township to look like in 10 years, 20 years, not what it looks like today.
2030,
What do you
yeah.
want it to look like?
Yeah.
And I don't think in the past, I haven't lived in Bath, I worked in Bath Township for 20 years, but,
You're
Bath
right.
Township does not have a,
You're
Bath
right.
Township does not have a great image outside of Bath Township.
Okay, so you're ready for the visioning, the goals, the objectives, you're ready for that big picture policy work that comes along with a master plan. Absolutely. And for inspiration, not that you might do this, but there's a city out east, Maryland, that has a 100-year plan and a 30, right? So it has a short midterm plan, it has a long-term plan.
You take a look at some township down in the Detroit area, like Canton Township,
Canton Township.
Son lives there, but look at Ford Road. How did that come about?
Wow.
With the building setback so far,
slide on this. You know, one of the things that, I've been on the planning commission for, I don't know, 10 years or so.
Okay.
I've seen, this will be my third comprehensive plan process that I've been somehow associated with. But one of the things that we do this plan, right, and we check the box, and the plan gets dusty on a shelf. And we as a body don't refer to it actively as we're doing our plan or ordinance review process.
Yeah.
Some of us may mention it, but it's especially not reviewed or leaned on by the township board of trustees. And so I think one thing is, are there tools and tips and best practices for making that document more a living, actionable document, or something that people are excited to lean on for help with guiding decision making.
That's excellent. We do have a few slides on that. Just generally, to view it as a living document, I mean, people will have spent hours on that document, all their energy going into it, all their ideas, and the more people, the greater level of overall public engagement and the co-creation of that plan, the more it will stay alive. That's the key part of it too. It's not just the data collection and research and mapping, it's the who are the people that came in and helped, young and old and all sorts of background experiences, right? That's what makes it alive, for sure. But yeah, we can talk more about that. Thank you for all your comments there. So, a bit about the nuts and bolts of the responsibilities of this body, the Planning Commission, as an administrator. You are the administrative branch of local government. The local government has three branches, just like Fed and state. You've got your legislative branch, that would be your township board, your elected people. You've got your administrative branch, that's you. You're administering the ordinance, the laws. Staff as well is part of that administrative branch. Does anybody know what the third and final branch that's not on here might be for the local government? The ZBA is quasi-judicial branch. It's not the judicial branch, it's the quasi-judicial, but the ZBA is that third branch. But you sit squarely and firmly in that administrative capacity for your local government, and the work you do is limited by all the procedures and standards in your zoning ordinance. That's what makes you administrative. And this is a laundry list of typical administrative decisions that you are in charge of. Your zoning administrator collects fees, checks your applications for completeness, receives the applications, does the permitting. And you as the Planning Commission, you are there for the special use permits, the site plan review, hearing and recommending or not recommending zoning amendments. Also for adopting or recommending adoption of your master plan, that's at the top of the list. Also, you can consider nonconformities, but again, all of these tasks are in your ordinance that you are administering. And there's probably more in there. Miles and Dottie will know. Or you will know. But then the big question is, philosophically, where does the Planning Commission get its authority to do any of this work? Well, the local governments are creatures of the state. State government, the state constitution created local governments and granted the authority to local townships to have that ability to create and adopt master plans and zoning ordinances. The Michigan Planning Enabling Act of 2008 is, how many of you have looked through that? Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's familiar. Lots of guidance in there about what you can and cannot do, right? So that's your authority for the work you do, that Planning Enabling Act. So we'll talk about master plans first. With that Planning Enabling Act. In the Planning Enabling Act, it gives you three options of how to approach a master plan update. You can decide as a body after you look at that document and say, it's fine, we've reviewed it, no changes are needed, and you make that decision as a body and tell your legislative board that's what you want to do. We're not going to make big changes. Or you review it and you say, this needs updating. We have to amend some pieces are out of date. We've implemented some parts of the old plan, we have to change that around, right? And so you want to rewrite some goals and policies, and you make a decision as a commission to amend that plan, and you let your legislative body know that. Or you can adopt a brand new plan. If you want to do a complete rewrite, new style, new format, new sections, amending it might kind of turn it into a Frankenstein, so you kind of want to say, let's just rewrite this thing. You can do that too. You just have to decide as a board to do that, and then let your elected officials know that. So you already know when your plan is due for an update. I got a stopwatch there, the clock is ticking.
Yes.
Coming up, coming up.
Yes, it is.
And I like these bubbles. They tell a visual story of what makes up a master plan. A master plan is 50-50, the orange bubble, purple bubble. In the orange, we say that a master plan is based on research, data, right? Analyzing the trends of the past, current trends, and then your future alternatives of how you would like to go, to grow. That has to be balanced with the purple bubble, which is engagement. Hosting those workshops, hosting those forums, educating people about the work you're doing, getting their feedback on how they'd like to see the community grow. All of that has to be balanced, and that creates what's in that green bubble there. Your master plan is your official formal statement of goals and objectives to guide future growth. And how is master plan tied to zoning ordinance? They're closely tied. There are some significant differences, though you probably know. The plan itself, master plan is a policy guide, it's not law. But it has to be updated in order to be a basis, to serve as a basis for zoning amendments. Because you have the zoning ordinance, which is the law, adopted by your legislative body, and it regulates land today. Compare that to the master plan, that's a guide for the future use of land, and it's adopted by you, the planning commission. In your bylaws, do you adopt it, or do you recommend adoption to elected body? Every community is different.
Recommend adoption.
Okay, super. That's difficult, yeah. Any questions on that relationship? This is why when you are looking at a zoning amendment application in front of you, you always look at the future land use map to see if it matches. Because you're basing your legal decision on a policy guide where you've done your due diligence and a lot of research to help make that decision. Switching now to Zoning Enabling Act, the second document that grants authority to you for developing and adopting zoning ordinances. See this map is, the blue is township and city zoning, so we have a lot of that in Michigan. Red is county. And we've got some spots that don't have zoning. They regulate land use in other ways, like Land Division Act or nuisance lawsuits, things like that. But we have a high prevalence of zoning across the state. That's just kind of the picture we want to show you there. That it is a tool that's enacted in many areas. And if you have zoning, you have to have a master plan. You'll find that there are communities, and we saw this when solar really hit the news a few years ago. Communities that did not have master plans or zoning ordinances historically were adopting a solar ordinance right away without a master plan, and they were going straight to court because they don't have that factual basis in the master plan to have that solar ordinance. So things were working kind of backwards there. So again, part of that relationship, again, is to have that plan if you have zoning. Okay. And,
Quick question.
yeah, yes.
So, can we have an ordinance that has no tie to a master plan?
It will not legally stand up in a court of law.
Could they have a regulatory ordinance that has no tie? You can't have a zoning ordinance, but you could have a regulatory ordinance.
Correct. You could have a regulatory ordinance like a noise ordinance,
Yeah.
blight ordinance, things like that. Sure, you have the power to have those. You don't need a master plan.
Just because when a layperson thinks about
zoning ordinance related to land use, you have to have a master plan, because if you end up ever getting challenged and being taken to court, the judge is going to look at your master plan and see how the planning commission.
Their code of ordinances articulates in clear fashion what's a regulatory ordinance versus a zoning ordinance.
It does. Yes, we have, so it specifically says that this is the zoning ordinance section and chapters, and then these are the regulatory ordinance sections and chapters. It could probably be a little bit better defined, but it's titled at the top, and then all the zoning in our mini code is actually in the zoning appendix.
What's interesting, a lot of websites, you'll find that you click on ordinances because you want to find the zoning ordinance, but you end up getting a laundry list of other ordinances, and zoning is at the end because it starts with a Z. All the others are regulatory ordinances.
Yeah, and we try to set up our links on our website to avoid that, because that was real estate agents were calling and they were confused. Yeah. One interesting thing though, that this might come into play, and it'll be kind of interesting to see how this plays out. Kind of a hot button issue right now, if you guys aren't aware, the county has been talking about where we should, I can't even say that word, getting rid of their ability or their, I guess, responsibility to zone, and they're talking about turning that over to the local units, and then you'll have basically, if you saw that map, there's only Bath Township, DeWitt, City of DeWitt, and Watertown Township that do or zoning. I think Eagle now, which wasn't on that map, after the whole battery thing, they took over their zoning.
Yeah, they'll get sued by that.
Yeah, I don't know how that went. But now the county's talking about turning over the local units. It'll be interesting to see if all these local units will scramble to adopt a master plan, or
And take over their own zoning.
there might be some consultant work available in the future of Plain County.
Yeah,
So,
good point. That puts the burden on the local government to put resources towards planning and zoning now that the county might stop doing that.
what will be interesting to see in kind of the hotline is like, some of these communities are like 1,000 residents.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. They might just try to do what you said, which you do see often with these smaller communities, like, let's adopt a zoning ordinance, and they'll adopt one, and then they'll get their first challenge, and we're off to the races.
It's educational process with that, with new officials too, yeah. Good point, very good point.
That'll be a cool thing for you guys to watch out for too.
Yeah. Keep my eye on that one.
Yeah.
For sure. Thank you for that discussion. I'll move us forward now through how the conduct of local government is limited by federal and state constitutions now. The work that you do, we understand the authority, where that comes from, now the Planning and Zoning Enabling Acts, the authority for the work you do, but how is the work you do limited? Well, it's limited through mainly what we call due process. And so from the federal constitution, the protections of due process are something that's due to every citizen to be able to have fair access under the law to a process. And when it comes down to local planning and zoning, due process is defined by the procedures that you use to do the zoning reviews and to update the master plan. There are 5 main stages of that in protecting due process. The noticing is such a stickler. It's a lot of detail getting that notice correct and sent out on time for the hearing, and then you hold the hearing. You have standards in your ordinance that you are administering, and then you keep a good record, minutes, keeping a good record and a packet of what happened, and then preserving, making sure they're unbiased decision making. Don't make the decision before the hearing. And if you do these things correctly, you will be upholding procedural due process, and then no developer can come in here and question and challenge you with what you've done. You've been correct under due process. And again, all of these, the reason that these are so important is that it just maintains fairness for the developer, for every developer who comes through over time, right? That the process is the same, it's reasonable, and protects the interests of property owners. Absolutely, so procedural due process, yeah.
So a small town like that, where planning commission members may have relationships with existing developers, situation where planning commission members are having conversations, site negotiations with developers, coming and bringing that in, whether out in the open or not out in the open.
Great, yep, so we want all commissioners to have equal access to all the same info to make that decision. Some might have different information. Is that what you're talking about? That's ex parte contact. Do you mind grabbing that green folder? Let's get right into this. There are, if you don't mind passing those out, they're the folded ones. They're 11 by 17 folded in the back there. Yeah, here they are. If you don't mind sharing one for everyone, that would be great. Let's get right into that. This is a scenario. We can briefly walk through it. I think I've got 11 or so, 12 or so, if there's enough. So, as you open this, does that everyone have one? Oh, super. Oh, thanks. Sparkyville is a hypothetical community we created at Extension that helps us with our trainings, right? It's a community kind of similar to that township, maybe a little bit, but anyway, that's beside the point. But what I want to do here is go through this scenario, which is right to your point. And it's ex parte contact because ex parte just means outside of a hearing, right? So you're having an additional contact. And how many of you have run into somebody, an applicant maybe even at the store or at church or outside of a hearing, right? And they start, hey, they want to start sharing information with you. And that's what this scenario gets to. Okay, Miles and Bobby, you do the reading. Do you mind doing the reading? The first 4 paragraphs there, Miles? That'd be great.
Yeah, sure. These are absolutely delightful, said Kathy Reiner after biting into a warm chocolate cookie at the Eager kitchen table. Sorry. Angie served the cookies along with hot water after Kathy and her Sparkyville Planning Commission member, I hate these names, Lynn Sun, returned from touring the White Creek property with Bill Yeager's green pickup. She and Lynn were there to make a site visit before the following week's public hearing on the Yeager's rezoning request. When the owner gave permission, Kathy always did an official inspection of the property being considered for any sort of planning commission decision. How else could you know what is really going on? Most of the rest of the planning commission members weren't as dedicated, relying on application materials or the zoning administrator's report. Kathy dragged Lynn along because she's a realtor. Lynn had real estate experience. Most of the time, Kathy just called the property owners to let them know when she was on her way to the property, except for the occasional threatening dog. Kathy has always been comfortable walking a portion of the property to confirm what was on the application, exchanging pleasantries with the owner now and again. Bill and Angie were particularly gracious on this frigid February day, with Bill hauling them around and Angie serving a warm shake. It was a bit awkward for Kathy and Lynn, sitting there both knowing that they had to vote for or against the rezoning, but the Yeagers were very nice people.
Very nice people. Thanks, Miles. Bobby, you mind finishing out?
On their tour, they bounced down the frozen, rutted farm lane and over the bit too narrow over Comfort Bridge over White Creek. Around the back of the property, then back to the homestead. Bill talked about how the farm had been theirs for over 45 years, pointed out the areas that were gravelly or wet, and how he and Angie really wanted to keep the rural character of the area. None of this information, of course, was in the written application. Kathy, Lynn, Bill, and Angie lingered for some time, visiting, gossiping about happenings in Sparkyville, and talking about how things used to be. As Kathy and Lynn were thanking them for their hospitality and getting ready to leave, Angie said, getting this property rezoned is very important to us. On their way back to town, Kathy commented that this was the most pleasant site visit she had ever made. Lynn couldn't help but think about the Yeager's kindness and the warm cookies.
Thank you. What do we think about the proper, what do we think about how this, was the site visit proper or not? What do you think?
Some value those cookies.
We don't have enough information, in my opinion, because what is the rezoning request? Is it now farmland and they're rezoning it to medium density residential, or?
Yeah, they're wanting to rezone it from ag to some type of residential, it was in here, maybe not. But no matter what the case is, we're just thinking about the behaviors of the two planning commissioners visiting the site, and they met the landowners, and then what happened. So what do we think about the level of proper behavior that we saw there? Proper, not proper?
I have a problem.
No problem with it?
None whatsoever.
Anybody want to add to that?
I think it could have been a little more business like that was.
How so?
Well, a little less personality get into it, so much, when you get there and make a professional decision about something, you need to get to know the property.
Getting to know the property is good. I mean, site visits, you can definitely, our property.
And she's going to make the decision whether the people, whether you like the people or not.
There you go, because there's nothing in the ordinance that says, are these people likable?
No.
It's not in the ordinance, right?
One, it was two planning commissioners going out at the same time,
Yep.
together.
Yeah, Lynn and Kathy.
I have strong objection to it. That's
Please,
because
go on.
there's differential information that's being used by the planning commission members for decision making.
They have information no one else has on the commission, right? This could be an issue. Right? They clearly they like the landowners, they thought it was the best site visit ever, they enjoyed the cookies. In ethics, and we'll get to that in a bit, there's a line about impropriety, and that can feed into unbiased or biased decision making too. We have to be careful about with ethics. And so let's move a step further now. So we've got votes that this was okay, this was not okay, people in the middle, but let's get into the whys. So what would be a better way to handle this? What are your thoughts? Folks who are kind of like, I don't know if this is right. What would be a better way?
You better, the planning commission did it together or didn't do it at all and relied on the information provided. But if you're going to go
Together, then you've
Yeah,
got to listen to the
Yeah,
right day of the meeting.
Notice it, yeah, sure, and it's done. Commissions do that. They can go out and notice that meeting, that site visit.
Yeah, but it's going to be a pain in the neck. Just give every commissioner the opportunity to go out and visit the site. If they choose to, that's fine. If they don't, oh well.
Yeah, and let's talk more about that. The issue becomes, now that Kathy and Lynn have information that the other commissioners don't have, what should they do? Immediately, what
Give
should
them
they
as
do?
much information as they can about what they discovered on the site visit.
Report back to the chair of the commission, to staff, to the commission itself, make sure everybody has that information.
Just one point on that real quick,
Please,
because I could see this being problematic. Just to clear up communicating between each other. What I wouldn't want is I wouldn't want the commissioners going, I did a site visit today, I'm writing an email, I'm emailing all 6 of you, let's discuss. Because now we're meeting again.
Now you're meeting.
Now, what are we violating?
Well, the meeting's at.
Yeah. So, but what you're saying is just to talk in specifics is, I did a site visit,
Make sure.
I talked to the chair, and the chair could talk to me, I could include that information in the staff report, for example,
Yeah.
or we could
Go right
email,
files.
out, or we could blind copy everyone and talk about that way there's not discussion between, and we have a written record saying they were blind copied, they weren't able to
Yeah.
discuss, they don't have each other's contact information.
So do you see the ethical dilemma? It's not that this was illegal, right? It's just an ethical issue that leads to more work. And ex parte contact, whether it happens when you go out on a site visit and bump into the landowner and they give you more info, or you bump into them at the store or in the parking lot, what would be the most surefire way to handle that situation that would preserve procedural due process and not be a violation of it? And would also be, wouldn't be looking like impropriety. Does anybody have any solutions? What would you do if you knew the gentleman here, the nice gentleman here, what if they approached you in the parking lot afterwards tonight and started giving you more information? What would you do? I'll point at you, you got what would you do?
Well, I'd probably try to keep the discussion as brief as possible.
Right, say, hey, save it for the hearing.
And then I'd ask them to talk to the commissioner.
Yeah, talk to Miles, save it, right, save it, and, because otherwise then, you're just inviting it, and then you're gonna be taking notes, and you're gonna be reporting it back, and it's just like, hey, wait, we got this whole hearing set up for you, let's work through the proper channels here. Absolutely. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Again, it's a question of ethics, and we'll get into some more of that in a minute, but.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm interjecting, and I'm not supposed to be as a planner, but, so, we talk about ethical and we talk about legal, and, do you have any examples or anything you've seen where, we were talking briefly on the break, I was telling you my friend that worked in Warren, who will not be named, they got a lawsuit during the whole marijuana, come up in Michigan because they didn't notice something. Have you seen a lawsuit or give an example where maybe there was, contact with planning commissioners or even planning staff that led to a lawsuit? So kind of the extreme end of what you're talking about. Here, this is more an ethical case. Would you have maybe a legal example that you've heard of? I can think of one that I think took place in Lansing Township where the planner was getting paid by the developer.
You answered it yourself.
But I don't know, I've seen that with a planner, but I haven't seen it with a planning commissioner.
We might not know that it happens with a planning commissioner.
Okay. I think those would be any interesting cases.
Unless it goes to court, and then it all comes out.
Sure.
It can be all very hush-hush. That's the whole issue about ethics, and making sure we maintain our own ethics, is that sometimes you do a lot to make sure people don't find out when you do something a little unethical as a commissioner or as a planner.
Okay.
So we don't necessarily have planning commissioners being unethical in such a way that it leads to a lawsuit. I have a funny one. I have a good one. Let me make sure I tell it right. A township up near, it was actually in Michigan, but it's not in Clinton County. It was a township planning commission that did not want mobile home parks. And so on their future land use map, and of course you're required by the Zoning Enabling Act to provide for all uses unless you do the research and can prove your neighboring community can do it instead of you and all.
Right.
But they said, okay, we'll plan for a mobile home park. But what they did was, they denoted it on the future land use map on the township board supervisor's farming property that would never be served by water or sewer and would never turn into a mobile home park. But legally they could say, here's where we plan for the mobile home park. And that went to court because they did get an application for a mobile home park, and when that person asked for a rezoning of that property, we didn't really intend for that, and so they lost that, and that went to court. So that was an expensive, unethical decision to make about, okay, we'll put it on the map, but we're never going to do it. But,
Our former planner received a box of Wi-Fi equipment from a local broadband supplier.
Oh.
That it promptly had to send back.
Yeah. And you can have in your bylaws the limits, right? Maybe a basket of cookies is okay, anything under $20 is okay, but it has to be provided to the whole staff you know, and you can have limits that are minimal, but Wi-Fi equipment, that's a good one.
A funny story that happened just briefly during my time here was kind of interesting. One of our interns, Lexi, you guys remember her? We had a meeting with a paper supply contractor who was moving into to a previously existing warehouse facility. They used to make caulking guns on old M78 now. They make they do custom books. They are licensed with 5 of the major publishing houses. So anyways, we're talking to the developer and they brought in this box of books. And I don't read fantasy novels, but apparently this intern did. And it was like this custom set of novels. And they were like, hey, yeah, and she's freaking out, like geeking out over this. They're like, you can have them. And I was like, oh, how much could these books be? They're probably under $20. And I was like, I had no idea. I'm like, yeah, it's under $20 because if it's under $20, you can like keep one. But if it's over $20, like, no, that's like, we have a policy, it's against it. They're like, this is valued at $650. I was like, okay, like we can't keep these. Like, I had no concept of how much these books were worth, but yeah, so it comes up.
Yeah, wherever humans are, it comes up.
And it's not even necessarily like they weren't trying to bribe; they just were trying to be nice. But
Yeah.
Well, she wouldn't have any influence anyhow.
yeah. So, but one of those things, either way,
But she was an administrator.
we don't even want the perception of impropriety.
There you are. Because if somebody got wind of that, who was unhappy with a decision made, they'd be like, oh,
I see how it is. I'm assuming.
I'm my lawyer.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, good examples. Good. So procedural due process, critical in the work that you do. Don't violate that. And then there is substantive due process, which has everything to do with the substance of the law. And making sure that the regulations in your zoning ordinance are reasonable and not overreaching. And that they are tied to some sort of element of public health, safety, and welfare. If you can't make that connection between a regulation and the public health, safety, and welfare, you don't make that argument, then it's probably an unreasonable regulation. And that's why you see this in the beginning of, it's probably on the first page of your zoning ordinance. The goal of the zoning ordinance is to promote health, safety, and welfare, right? Because you're preserving due process by making sure your regulations are the minimal regulation necessary to advance whatever governmental interest you have in that review process. If it's found that some of your, or one of your zoning regulations is unreasonable, overreaching, actually does create a taking where someone doesn't have any financial use of their land, you're going to go straight to court. And the judge will take a look at the reasonableness of your regulations and make sure it's tied to public health, safety, and welfare. So again, that's one way that the conduct of your work is limited by the federal constitution. I'm going to jump now into the roles of commission members, including the public. So the Planning and Enabling Act defines the roles that need to be on a commission. Chair, members, you have secretary, staff, and the public. And everyone plays an important role. Let's start with the chair. Mr. Chair? Your role is to make and approve agendas, run the meeting to that agenda, set the tone for the meeting, right? Mediate conflict, right? Having some conflict management skills is important. To be able to read the room and handle contentious hearings as well, and to know when closure has been reached and to move on. Instead of, beating a dead horse, you can kind of tell when the conversation is over with and now let's bring it to a vote. You have those skills to identify that. And you can represent the board to the public. So the skills are, active listening, conflict resolution, being able to facilitate a group discussion, and do some troubleshooting when bumps come along, meeting management. The rest of the members here, attendance is critical. Reading through that master plan and zoning ordinance, knowing both documents fairly well is important, and knowing your packet materials ahead of time. And again, back to the due process, refrain from deciding on a case before the meeting discussion or meeting hearing. And then always participate in the deliberation, to be vocal. And you again are that bridge between the public and staff. And it's similar to the chair, right? You have active listening skills, you're listening to people, able to reflect back to them what you've heard, and aware of nonverbal communication as well, and your willingness to speak up.
Are you indicating that we should read the packet before we attend meetings?
I was going to call over Miles.
I mean, I hope everyone's reading, I put a lot of work into them.
Make sure the packet goes out well before the meeting.
Yeah.
It's always the Thursday before, so we like to give people the weekend to review it, so it's not, of course, sending it out Monday night or something.
Do you do PDF packets too, or is it print usually?
We do PDFs, we upload them to, for the ZBA, we do have a couple members that like to get their packets mailed to them.
Okay, sure.
So we'll actually mail those the Monday, the week before the meeting on Tuesday. That way it gets to them, that same Thursday-ish day
Yeah.
that the packet goes live online. We could do that for people on the planning commission, just as an ever request. We obviously don't put, it's not something we put out there in 2025 because we have faith in the internet. I would say that we have several members, usually the chair, will come in and meet with me about the packet, either prior to, in the process of it getting put together, or, once it's been put together, I'll stop in on Friday and we'll talk about it. Usually, our current vice chair, but even before he was the vice chair, Vice Chair Baker here, he will usually call me, Mark, you called me a couple of times, Ray, you called me a couple of times, so.
Door's always open.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kinda,
cool. That's great.
You should have been I mean, even when Jason was on the board for a period of time, and I really appreciate when Jason was on the board because, kind of like you've been alluding to, sometimes the board might not be as involved. I would say right now with our current board, the treasurer is particularly involved in the planning. I guarantee tomorrow morning I'll come in the office and she'll be watching this video.
Yeah.
But Jason always popped in, especially when we were going through a lot of the marijuana stuff. You were pretty active when you were on the board and we were discussing all that. So that, it's always appreciated when we have a board that's more active in the planning world.
Sure, yeah,
That
absolutely.
would be in the ass, by the way.
No, you're good. We
No,
definitely
I'm
talking about, I think we really threaded that needle with the marijuana stuff, so I was happy about that.
How long did it take? Like,
Only years, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, about that.
That's quick time in planning world. The secretary, do we have a secretary here? Are you the
We
secretary?
don't, yeah, we do,
Okay.
we do minutes.
Great, well, then there's a talent to taking minutes, right? There's kind of a magical part to it. Don't include too much detail, but,
Enough.
enough.
Yes, it's sort of.
So people know what happened, and especially it's a legal record, right? So in case in the future someone needs to refer to what happened at that hearing, they know enough. There was an incident of, I think Southern Michigan, where township was taken to task or taken to court over a zoning decision, and it was found that the minutes weren't detailed enough at all, like really.
But they didn't even put the vote.
Right, it was not a good record of how the hearing went, and then the voting and all of that, it was a mess. And the judge ordered the township to hire a court reporter and rehold the hearing. It was expensive.
So is it safe to assume that it doesn't necessarily have to be a staff member of the township, that can be the treasurer, the secretary, can be a member of the planning commission?
It often is.
It often is, it would be in your bylaws if
I
you
was-
wanted it to be.
I was surprised here actually that when I first started working here that it wasn't a member of the planning commission.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I've seen it both ways. I've seen the planning secretary be the planning department administrator, like the secretary person be the secretary for the planning commission. And then I've seen the commissioners serve that as well. So it all depends on what you want to do.
Well, all of our meetings are taped and archived anyhow, so.
Yeah, good.
I was about to ask about that, just because, you worked at Tri-County, you speak to more people at the state probably than I. Is there one of the frustrations of like me and like my peer group of local planners is, with the Plan Enabling Act, you're required to notice in a newspaper or local circulation. Well, no one reads the paper anymore, and with the minutes, we're taking them, we're doing them, we're posting them online. We're also, all of this will get, as long as I've been here, at least I can't speak to before, but the intent is we're archiving these
use on our server and on YouTube, which is on our cloud, on our channel, to live forever. Has there ever been any talk at the state legislature about maybe looking at some of this noticing policy or minute policy and bringing it into the 21st century?
I think recordings and videos are great for members of the community and other staff. What it comes down to, I believe, is the Attorney General's opinion, and Open Meetings Act is where that would come into play. And I believe that I think the basis, the foundation for why we have written minutes in a condensed, concise, well-written manner is that it's for pure legal reasons. If a judge or a lawyer needs the minutes of that hearing, that's all they want. And so I think it's a matter of efficiency for the legal aspect of the work you do to have access just to that written record instead of them having to glean through 2 hours of a meeting. I think that's the focus of why we still have written minutes, so that it is ease of use for if there's litigation.
Yeah, were you also referring to the notification aspect?
Yeah, the notification, because I know then, again, this is just like kind of planner, for lack of better terms, training sessions we do at, the annual conference. But, a lot of people feel these days that the community Facebook page might be a better place to notice a hearing about the comprehensive plan will get viewed by more eyes than in the notice section of the Lansing State Journal.
And it does, and that's for real. That's a real benefit to get it on social media and the website.
Yeah, so it's just like, what are we doing? We're getting, like in the newspapers, they know that we are legally required, and right now they're only one in our area of circulation.
Yeah.
So they set that price. I mean,
Sounds good.
it's getting expensive.
It is, and again, it goes back to what a judge would want to see. They want to see a printed notice. If you use Facebook, you would want to maybe print those and keep those in the archive as well with the record, because social media is so nebulous and things disappear. You would want to, keep those archived.
Well, right now we're doing
Screen
both.
prints.
I wonder if the legislator has ever looked at removing the requirement for the paper and instituting a requirement for like a social media blast. I mean, there would have to be standards created.
I'm hearing something different here. One is publishing in the local paper isn't necessary.
No, I don't think
And
it's
so
necessary.
what I'm hearing is that if we have a solid plan for paper noticing with locations, with posting, and a distribution method that we feel comfortable defending in a court of law, that would be sufficient.
Oh, no, we have to notice in the paper, it's specifically called out planning enabling act.
Yeah, some of those having
City
any
legislation.
I think she was alluding to it's nice that we do it on Facebook, but we need to keep a record, but no, we have to do it currently until the state amends the planning enabling act, which I think they amended last in 2006.
8, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
2008, yeah.
As a professional planner, I would like to see those things added to a sufficient record. You could add printouts of social media posts, and I don't know when that would happen. I think,
It's just the cost burden and the time turnaround,
Yeah.
right? Because right now, if anyone's not aware, like 5 lines of text are going, like a notice for 5 lines of text are going about $150 right now for a notice. And then it's problematic too, because when we want to hold the public hearing, so we're counting 14 calendar days back.
yeah,
And they're like, okay, we want it to be that date, then we gotta get it to the newspaper by this day. And then, which means we have to have the notice created by this day. And now I'm on the counter, like, we will get this to the planning commission 2.5 months from now. Or if you did a Facebook page, we could do just 14 days out, put it on Facebook.
it's a good point. It's a good point. I don't know the route to do that would be talk to the legislators, talk to.
I just didn't know if you've ever heard it
Yeah,
discussed.
I have not.
Okay,
No.
sorry.
To be an amendment to the Open Meetings Act as well, and record keeping. Yeah, there's a lot to that question. It's
Getting
not as
around the
simple-
lobbyists of the newspaper.
It's not as simple as,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a nice little thing for them.
Well, it adds to our cost, and then we pass it on to the applicant.
Yeah, yeah,
So it adds to their
Absolutely.
cost.
it does. Things trickle down like that. I think, when it comes to holding hearings and noticing, that really is the bare minimum. We view that in the planning world as the bare minimum legal requirement. Anything you do more than that, social media, or engage the public in a more meaningful way instead of a hearing or in addition to a hearing, then you're getting into quality planning. There's a court case, New York State, where, well, even cities in Michigan do it, Ann Arbor, some communities do this. The developer is required to get feedback from the neighbors around the site where it's going to be built, and the neighbors can even co-design the site plan with the developer. Wow. That's been held in court a lot.
Wow.
You're talking way above and beyond the hearing.
Yeah.
Hearing is way minimal requirement. It gets you through the process, the whole due process, but it really can be frustrating. You want more. I understand.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, good discussion. This staff provides that administrative support, pre-meeting planning, pre-application conversations with the developer, of course, presenting info per the agenda as requested, and it's really the technical expertise person for what comes in front of the planning commission. The person does not vote. They can also provide independent review on cases as well because of that technical expertise. And the public also, their role is to provide input to the board or opinions to the board. They have the right to attend meetings, but also to obey time limits and meeting rules, just like planning commissioners. They also don't deliberate, they don't vote. If a member of the public stands up during a hearing and provides a comment that is actually legitimately would require more research before you make your decision, that's the only time a member of the public can stand up and sway what happens in a hearing. It can't just be pure emotion of a positive or a negative about a case that sways what you do as a commission. That's not enough. But if someone stands up here and says, you didn't study the noise levels coming across such and such road when this is put in, I don't see anything about noise, the chair can acknowledge that and say, that's a legitimate concern about this site plan that might require more info, so let's table. That's really the only time the public can have that sort of sway on commission. But again, they can't vote or deliberate. And also, public input during a hearing needs to be directed to the chair and not to other members. And it's up to the chair to control that communication back and forth as well. And it's also, you may or may not know already, you don't have to get into a conversation with a member of the public who's standing up here. You can do active listening, nod your head, yes, we hear you, thank you for your comment, and you can move on. You don't, there's no requirement to have a back and forth. And that kind of gets back to my comment 5 minutes ago of a hearing is really not that engaging. You do other things if you want that level of engagement, you can hold a workshop or things like that, or a forum, but a hearing is very straightforward. Did you have a question?
If the commissioners decide they want to have an open meeting with the public, and they make that motion, that's permissible, isn't it?
A meeting of the whole.
Meeting of the whole?
A meeting of the whole, and including discussion with
The
the public.
and the
Sure, yes, with the skills of public, being able to facilitate that conversation, absolutely, and
Because we've done
manage
that.
conflict.
The numerous occasions.
Yeah. Super. So you are an appointed board. You were appointed by the legislative branch, right? The board, the township board, to implement their rules, implement their policies and laws, and to hold meetings and hearings and provide recommendations back up to that elected body and to communicate effectively. They also, the board has expectations about you staying within a budget, if you have a budget for the master plan or public engagement, staying within the constraints of the law, and practicing your ethical behavior. And here are some, based on some interviews, what elected boards actually expect from appointed boards through the years. Some results, right? Following through on some policy priorities, that happens through master planning. Some competency see like knowing due process, knowing best practices in the work that you do in master planning and zoning review, to be able to communicate your accomplishments each year or your issues. Do you do an annual report to the board? That's key. That really helps you communicate with them. And to be organized, to go through trainings like tonight, to have qualified individuals doing the work that you do, and to work from your bylaws. So this is what your elected board expects from us. Okay, and along with that comes ethics. I have just a couple slides on ethics now. We talked a bit earlier, but there's always more to know. Holding yourself to a higher standard than as a government official, similar to how we hold teachers to a higher standard, just in how people act and behave and the decisions that they make. So ethics is not the rule of the law. It's knowing the difference between what you have the right to do and what is right to do. So there's a nuance there between law and ethics. If you've got a military background, you might know the Latin non-civii, son patriae, not for self, but for country, but for planning officials. Did I say the Latin right?
No, I don't know. I was in the Marines and I've never heard that. So I'm thinking we're not very ethical.
It might be old-fashioned, I'm not judging. But anyway, it's something that we tell ourselves as planning commissioners, non-civil, it's not for myself. I am part of a governmental body now, working for the public good. And there are some moral principles that govern that. Avoiding conflicts of interest. If you have any connection to a developer, any financial connection to an applicant, that's something that you need to share with the board, and the board decides what to do. In your bylaws, there should be guidance for how to handle conflict of interest. That could be a tool, helpful tool if you don't have that in there. It can define different levels of conflict of interest, like if it's your spouse is the applicant, you need to excuse yourself. If you have a financial interest with the applicant, excuse yourself. But again, it's not a matter of you keeping it to yourself and deciding to excuse yourself. You're part of a body now, so if you feel you have a conflict of interest, it has to be shared amongst the board for discussion, and you decide together what to do. And you can step away entirely from the process, not be in the room. Some people sit out here, but it's still kind of soft power out here. We can impact what happens up here. So, again, bylaws, or even a code of ethics can help. Code of conduct can help give guidance on these types of things. Ex parte contact, we already went through that issue. It's very nuanced. And incompatible offices, to try to avoid holding an office that is a supervisory to another office you hold. Like if you hold a position that decides the salary and the budget for another position you hold over here, it's probably ethical gray area. Lead issues, right? That's all incompatible offices. And again, that appears in texting and meetings and things like that. Little things make a difference.
Can you go back 2 slides, please?
Yeah.
So, the ethics assessment of the letter of the law, my interest is piqued in this because they tend to be a letter of the law when it comes to the ordinances.
Of course, you should be, yes.
Now, the question I have is, say there's a development that's gone through the process and we're in meeting number 6 or something like that, and then we find something that is not compliant with an element of the ordinance. What does ethics say there?
Law sets in. If they have something that doesn't comply with the letter of the ordinance, you cannot approve it. Or you could condition it. You say, we'll approve this, but we're going to put a condition on getting fixed this before it's filled.
Because it still has to be compliant at the end of the day.
It has to be compliant to whatever's in the ordinance, yeah. Ethics is more about how you comport yourself through time and with others and handle developers and applicants and people related. But when it comes to regulations in the ordinance, that's the law, and you have to meet those. Yeah, there's no ethical gray area of, should I have them meet that requirement? No, they have to. That's a good question, though.
Can I give you a real scenario of that?
Yeah, I love those.
Okay, you got a developer that comes to you and has a development, and some of the lots are too narrow or not have enough square footage to meet the standard for that zoning district. So you do do some research and you find out in the past history, there have been 3 developments that have been approved and built, and some of the lots do not meet the standard for width and/or square footage.
When they were approved like that?
And they were improved. But where does ethics come in and where does the law apply?
The law applies right away for all of it across the board. And it depends, is a great legal comment. You'd have to take a look, okay, so I'm assuming those non-conforming lots were created after, okay, no, I gotta step back from that. Because there's an issue of legal non-conformities. Those are lots that comply with the ordinance sometime back in the past. And then the ordinance was amended and changed, and now they don't comply. That's a legal nonconformity that can
Yes,
continue.
that is.
But you're saying illegal lots were created under modern zoning.
Yes,
I
the
think
zoning did
They
not
were
change.
approved.
Yes, and the whole site plan was approved.
John, I think the first standard is the first scenario, is a more likely scenario for what you're talking about.
That they're legal
For
nonconforming.
legal non-conforming.
Or the ordinance didn't change though.
Or they were applied for under a different land use, like a income, like under the PUD language as well as whatever the other.
Oh,
land use
PUDs are very
was.
flexible.
Yeah, and instead of like just making it like a straight up attached condominium development. Like there's a lot of, I get where you're going with the realistic scenario, but there's a lot of nuances that are happening that we could talk about for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there are.
Yeah, that's why I started. It depends. It would take me 2 hours to give you a correct answer, because I'd have to look at each lot and then the history and the packet and the minutes.
Yeah, we would have to get into
But-
years of records to give you a full picture of what happened with all those.
And then, I think, and then thank you, and then taking your comment generally, if you find that in recent memory, a lot was created or a development was approved that ended up not meeting ordinance standards, like it's really an illegal use, it has to be caught really early before things are starting to be built, because the developer can have a vested interest.
Right.
And then there's nothing you can really do, but you have to move forward correctly. Like next time that type of applicant comes through, application has to be done correctly. We can learn from the
Yeah,
past.
once the issue is made public and your hands are, and everyone's made aware of what the standards are, then that's when your hands begin to get tied in terms of what you can or maybe should be doing.
Yeah.
But like the example that, like a minor example that we see a lot is like person builds shed, applies for shed, accidentally approved shed because you're reviewing, in a larger community, 25 sheds a day, and humans are humans, and they make mistakes, and maybe the zoning administrator or the person approving the shed, it said low density residential, and they accidentally read the standard of medium density, which has a different side yard setback, and an accident was made, and then the shed was built, and 5 years later, somebody is reviewing recent shed approvals, and, or, they're trying to get a second shed, and the person says, who approved this first shed? And then they go to, and they say, we'd like you to remove your shed, and they say, well, I have a permit from you saying it was approved. We are off to court, and they will, and they say, well, I have a permit from you saying it was approved. We are off to court, and they will win that court case.
They will.
But the exception there is, does that prior mistake then serve as justification for making exceptions to
Never.
in the future?
Never, no, never. And that's a common question from commissioners, that's a good one. Yeah, no, there's never the implied that that's a precedent for it's okay to do that in the future, it never is. It's better to acknowledge the mistake that was made, if it ever comes up, like, oh yeah, we did find that those standards weren't met, and that was an error, we're moving forward, not correctly.
What's interesting to me is, what we talked about in the past, is like, how did we get there? And on my part, going back and reviewing the history of the approval and finding those nuances and figuring out what happened, so we can move forward as informed.
Almost like to a blank slate, right? Since you're now the zoning administrator.
into it because it does give me a little bit more latitude, and I feel like my hands aren't as tied as they were. Don't fuck it up. Yeah, we'll see. Do our best.
That can't be fun. We do our best.
That's right, that's all we can
We're
do.
human. Final section for tonight, I'm going to get into some of your foundational documents you can refer to for reference, and then I'll talk a bit about county planning, and then we'll finish up. Planning commissions generally have an ordinance that they work under that is similar to bylaws, but it explains, it's a section in your ordinance that talks about how membership is created, trainings, how to remove anyone from office for malfeasance or nonfeasance, how often you have to meet. And so take a look at that document, the understanding of the elements in that. It can also get into ethics and code of conduct as well. It can be tied into that. You can have rules of procedure as a standalone document as well. And the rules of procedure can get into the processes for how you hold hearings, how you meet Open Meetings Act requirements, and the roles of the officers in order of business. I'm not sure if you have these types of foundational documents, but generally. And when you do have these updated rules of procedure and your own ordinance for how to conduct yourselves, it increases confidence in the work you do and decreases your legal risk of making challengeable legal decisions. And commissioners should always be provided with your own rules of procedure, that ordinance, your zoning ordinance, a copy of the master plan. And there should always be an open door with staff, and it sounds like there is here, to have meetings, to talk about trainings, issues, expectations, to have that open door for communication with staff and commissioners and the chair. So generally, that brings that section to an end. I'm going to talk a little bit about County Planning Commission. The County Planning Commission, I have a copy here of Clinton County's 2022 master plan. They also have the responsibility of keeping their master plan up to date, similar to how you do here at the township. But the county master plan is it can be a little different. It can have a generalized future land use map that talks about charter township, master planning, general law township, future land use planning. And so they really do have that broad look across the entire county. And that is a resource for local communities. The county plan itself also has data, has goals and objectives that can be pulled and used by local townships and communities for your own master planning. So look to the County Planning Commission as a resource for data and research and mapping for your own master plan. Might save a lot of money and time. Yes?
And maybe this is for another slide, but if the local set of ordinances is silent on a topic, do we revert to the county ordinance if it's relevant?
Silent in the ordinance generally means that you're complicit or supportive of that type of use. That's generally kind of a law concept. If you're silent, you're complicit. But if you're silent on the topic, it generally means it's allowed, so that an applicant could
So the county ordinance say it isn't silent. So we have a local set of ordinances, and the county has their ordinances. Their ordinances do not apply to that township because we have our own.
Because you are a charter township, you have that charter, you have your own authority for planning and zoning, correct?
Okay. And so
there's a little more to it too, I can get into that.
the value then of, say, Clinton County's master plan and set of ordinances is that it can serve as a template for our work.
A template, and they can do some of the homework for you. You can pull from the trends and the research, and you can have conversations with their staff, and they can help you with your master plan, for sure. And there's a bit more to the services they provide to you as well beyond planning. They conduct reviews of local zoning amendments, and the reason for that is that they're kind of a legal safety net for local townships, whether or not it's charter or general law. Well, it would be charter townships that send your local zoning amendments to them for comment. They take a look at all rezonings that you do and the decision that was made, and they can concur or they can go against the decision that was made, and they have to give reasons. And generally, the reasons I have found are that their staff has found that noticing was incorrect. So the local township was in violation of due process, you gotta do it over. So, and that happens quite commonly. Little things about due process, the county actually catches them when you have a zoning amendment hearing. Or if the rezoning, for instance, if you had a property here that was to be rezoned and it was adjacent to a neighboring township and the new land use was not going to be compatible with what was over the border, the county would let you know that. If those land uses are not compatible. So they're kind of red flags, and they help you legally.
So does the county have veto power over a zoning?
No.
It's just commentary.
It's very important commentary.
Have we ever gotten county feedback? So when Doug Riley was the planner and more and more regular communication, currently the county, I understand, like, this is all, again, like, this sounds great. If anything, we're watching their zoning ordinances closer. Their zoning ordinances and procedures, and they're noticing more than they're counting on our procedures and our noticing.
And that's a shame. Like, there's room for improvement there because there really could be a safety net for locals more than they.
I think,
perhaps are.
as I alluded to earlier, I think the county is evaluating whether they want to even continue in the active zoning. So it's kind of, right now, at least it's a political.
Do they have a choice in that? I mean, is it, what is it, zoning and neighboring act, is it by default?
They're not required, they're not.
They're not required.
Nobody's required to have zoning or planning. It just happens that lots of us have zoning, and that's our chosen tool for land use regulation, and so if we have zoning, we better have a plan. So it's the same across county as well. For counties, they don't have to.
So,
There are counties that don't have zoning and planning.
so current county zoning just goes away, right? And they disband their code of ordinances and all that kind of stuff. And say only half of the townships create their own planning commissions, or adopt the code master plan code of ordinance. The other half does not. Those just become unzoned communities.
They could choose that.
Yeah. Okay. When I worked up in the UP, we had a number of unzoned communities, and there were ways that they would institute land use policy, private landowners, zoning boards also put in deed restrictions as a township.
Deed restrictions, land division act, for instance, lawsuits.
Yeah, lawsuits would be a good
Neighbor
way.
to neighbor lawsuits.
But it gets pretty messy.
It's messy. So a strong county planning commission is worth investing in and supporting because it is that legal safety net. And they do a lot of data. They collect data, they do mapping and research, and can do some fabulous things to support local communities. They really can. I see it.
Their GIS department, Clinton County, is, they help us out a ton. But on the planning and producing, that's much.
Yeah, and that could be strengthened. It's worth it. I've seen it across the state where it's worth it. It keeps locals out of court. Again, it is advisory, the work that they do, but it's important advice. And they're looking for consistency across zoning and master plans between the townships. They can review local master plans as well, which can be very valuable commentary to make sure that your master plan is consistent with the master plans of your neighbors and things like that, and do considerable research on that. And again, they have their own bylaws. They keep a record of the work that they do. They have a capital improvement program for county. Ideally, the county planning commission would be looking at capital improvement plans for county departments. So department heads would send their project ideas through that process for approval and for funding. That's another critical tool that county planning commissions can serve. They have annual reports, they have budgets, work plans, similar to you as well. And again, think about your own annual report, your own work plan teams. If you have special projects going on through the year, you would want to create little work teams for that with representatives across the different bodies. And you would want to budget for those activities. So in summary, here are your top roles and responsibilities we've gone through. Just being familiar with the elements of the work you do and being communicative and knowing your role. If you're interested in a deeper dive, tonight was very high level, touching on a lot of topics, but if you're interested in a deeper dive into citizen planner and online or zoning administrator certificate courses and webinar series, all sorts of things, feel free to scan this and bookmark the extension planning website. We have lots of articles, events, workshops, webinars, and I'd love to get your feedback. I can share a link as well if QR codes don't work tonight. This is a QR code to my evaluation. I'd love to hear your comments tonight. And there I am with Rory. Thank you. Thanks for having us. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
John, can I talk about process real quick before we wrap this up?
Yeah.
So, obviously I've been in touch with, MSU Extension to set this all up tonight. The chair was involved in, this decision to bring this training. There's a couple other modules that we were interested in. We're going to we spoke to you about, looking at how our agendas fill out, especially in this period of comprehensive planning. We're getting quite busy. We do have a second meeting set aside for some of that too, which will be useful throughout the year. But we'd like to, I think, have you guys back. That's something that we've talked about.
Yeah.
So just to keep the planning commission, I guess, in the loop.
Yeah, we can talk about master planning, we
This is
can talk
gonna be a
about
series.
engagement, anything.
Yeah, so they have a bunch of topics that they do, and we'll try to keep them pertinent to kind of what is on the agenda. And I took a lot away tonight, I really appreciate it.
Oh, good, yeah, thank you. I did too. Thanks for all the sharing, the real world experiences. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good to see you all.
Thank you so much. So what was on the topic? It's been a while since we looked at it. I'm wondering if we could bring onto the future agenda, new future agenda, a review of those financial documents. Sure.
I don't know.
I'm assuming they have not been reviewed and updated in over a decade.
Well over a decade.
I'll email.
Oh, yeah, I've got the dates already reserved. Yeah, you know where I am. Thank you.
No, I don't think so. You opposed to having kind of separate meeting?
Like a working meeting?
Yeah, like the working meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's something that we need to take into account staff time.
Right.
One time.
We've got quite a
It's not
few.
good. Time that.
I got a feeling that's something that takes a couple of hours at least to address. Unless we're going to address it in pieces.
We just nailed it out of planning commission members and
The
then.
existing, I mean, the existing documents,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then see what we want to change. Oh, yeah, that's not a problem.
And then maybe just have like a discussion of like.
Good night.
Thank you. Hope you have a great evening.
You too.
Yeah, that's not a problem. And then just have it set aside in a meeting for a half hour or so.
We may decide to do a workshop.
And then we can decide whether we want a workshop. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I don't have a problem.
You want me to blind copy send out the, what I'm gathering is I need a blind copy send out to the planning commission members, a copy of the current bylaws.
Yes.
Okay, we can do that. We just made a note of it, so we won't forget.
We have other founding documents.
I'll send out what we got. I mean, I'll look through. I know for sure we have the bylaws. Those are whenever the new members come on, that's something we always send out. As we send out the MSU extension program, which, a lot of our members have taken advantage of, which I think is cool.
It was a good thing to go through for me to take the race course that she was talking
Well,
about.
Mark, you even took the dance course, didn't you? Yeah. Okay, I can do that, no problem.
Good.
At one time also made a, template of how the agenda, or how the meeting's supposed to be run or something like that, didn't they?
Well, the board looked at their. Theirs, yeah.
Their rules.
Not for everybody, just for
And the board dictates the CIP process.
I think last time we looked at the bylaws, that there was a certain board trustee member, and it was during the time we were going through the marijuana planning process. It's got a little out of hand.
So, Miles, let's move on to the CIP introduction.
All right, so including the packet tonight, I know what you guys have seen in similar documents to us for the last couple of years. I know there's obviously a discussion about the CIP process. Again, I'm trying to save myself here. I'm a neutral staff party in this process that is trying to administrate the process that has been given to me by the elected body via their staff liaison member, which is my boss, the superintendent. So this is the CIP process we've done for the last couple of years, or how it's been done in that for the last couple of years. We set a schedule tonight. We're kicking the process off, so with the end result of working our way backwards from when we want to get it to the board, so they can make informed decisions come their budget cycle for the 2026 budget. One CIP that I will be bringing this year as part of, because the department heads are able to submit CIPs to this body to review, so it's my intention at least, we made a recommendation to the board with our recent, or this body made a recommendation to the board with the recent vote on tapping fees. So a CIP project is going to be, I'm going to request that funds be set aside following the recommendations for this body to reinforce that, or the hiring of a firm, engineering firm or otherwise, to look at the tapping fee and do an evaluation. So kind of an unusual CIP, but nonetheless, capital improvement project that's going to require funds in the budget.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll keep this out following tonight's meeting. We don't need a vote or anything from this fight. It's more just, this is the public meeting in which this is being discussed, and it's kind of the first, hey, we're planning on doing this thing. Here's a timeline, and staff will send this out to all the applicable, department heads, and the chairs of all the various committees, commissions, and boards. Because committee, commission, board, by a vote could also bring the CIP forward.
Right.
I guess if you have any questions here tonight or otherwise, just reach out to me about the process. If you have any questions or desires for this process, I would encourage you to reach out to the board. Reach out to the supervisor, Ryan Siemens Bliss. He's an approachable guy. I know he's got his own thoughts about this process.
You say that we could, by vote, bring capital improvements?
You could, yeah, I vote of the whole of the planning commission could add a project that you would have to review, so that would be odd. So I don't know exactly the ethics on that one, but ultimately it's the board, right, that chooses to implement the project or not, so.
Yeah, we're just advisories, so I don't see any conflict of interest there.
Yeah. So I don't know, that's a weird one, but that's how we run it here. So yeah, if you guys got something that you feel, bring it up. Not gonna run some ideas.
Well, some of you may be able to incorporate in the master plan.
This is gonna be a cool year, just focusing, again, just to bring it back. I feel a lot of what was said tonight by the planning commission about kind of like the zooming out and like what's the direction here. And just for my own, knowing how to evaluate things, I'm excited to go through this process with you guys so I have a better sense of what the will is and the direction is. So it's gonna be cool.
I have to imagine your heart of hearts and your professional, whatever that fire is, the true planning process is what needs that part of you, not the site plan review.
Yeah, no, for sure. I wanted to help inform site plan review, and I think that's one of the reasons why we chose to go down the direction of, discussions with the board and seeking out this grant and kind of, instead of just doing a simple we did this 3 years ago, let's go ahead and just make a quick amendment, change some dates, we don't want to dig into it. All right, that's all I got though, Chair.
That's good. Your report to the planner as well?
You want to move to the next
You had
item?
something else?
No.
So the capital improvement planning process would be for the 2026 budget year, right?
Correct.
But spans 5 years total. 5 years. And then when do we anticipate finalizing the comprehensive plan?
Right now, the typical comprehensive plan process, which we've already started some of that process, it just hasn't been brought in front of you guys yet, so I prefer to talk about it here in a second. The typical is 12 to 18 months. Our straight up deadline is January 2027. But we cannot get that done any later than January 2027.
So while I was joking in terms of, I got lots of grants, one of the things for us as a planning commission to think about is as we're thinking, starting to engage in the comprehensive planning process, sometimes gathering data is an expensive process.
For sure.
And we may not have the budgets within the planning department or this grant for the comprehensive plan. So it may be something that we may want to think about is adding capital improvement plan that may gather information that may help us within this kind of larger future planning process.
Yeah, that's not bad. One thing that I would say to think about, and I just had a meeting, I'll talk about it when I get to the report.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
We can look at the comments and then report for plan.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go right into that, and I'll get the rest of it. So we had a meeting earlier last week with Gibble and Webster staff, the supervisor, and I think the consulting firm that the supervisor is looking to go with for the strategic plan. And one of the main thing that we were talking about was outreach fatigue, and we were looking for areas where, because they're on an accelerated time, they're trying to get this thing done, and their goal is like 6 months, which I have my doubts, but we'll see if they can make it happen. And then we have a longer timeline. We're still trying to marry up when we think different outreach events will happen. That way, we're not over, people get survey fatigue, it's talked about a lot. So this will be, 2025 will be a heavy survey year for the public. So I would just say, if we're thinking about doing that, maybe it is appropriate to include it in the 2026 year, but definitely I guess if you're including that budget's not going to happen earlier than 2026. But I was just going to caution you, Alec, adding more outreach to an already outreach heavy year might not be wise. But 2026 is a new year, so sure.
So you're talking about survey fatigue, is all the outreach going to be survey based?
Not all of it will be survey based, but some of it will be like with the comp plan, we're trying to, we've even talked to the school superintendent, just workshopping some ideas of, hey, when is the baseball tournament? Can we set up a table at said baseball tournament?
Yeah.
I don't think
there's anything, there's no scientific literature on outreach fatigue. Typically, populations are appreciative of having their voice heard.
No, for sure, and I hope that's the case. I just could see, if we have a table set up, but then we're there next week with a similar table, but a different set of outreach, so again, we just talk to you. And not that they won't want to talk to us again, but if you're good, what's going on? But again, I don't think actually your timeline would be problematic, because if it's a part of the 2026 budget, I hope we have a lot of our outreach done by January 2026.
Yeah, and I'm not really limited in terms of gathering data from community members. There's other sorts of data from engineering firms or other
professional services.
Right.
Okay, so that's all right. That's one thing. We do have. I got some good news. What was it, end of last week? So pretty stoked about this. If you guys remember, we applied for a placemaking grant. We applied for a sub-grant through LEAP, and they kind of log-rolled us with 13 other communities, I believe, and then we did a larger regional application to the MEDC. We ended up getting we've been preliminary approved for the full grant amount we applied for, which was $250,000. So
It's a decent chunk of change. We got some meetings set up later this week on the staff and with the road commission and consumers energy to talk about, doing, changing up some of the lights and some of the parts that we had on order, for the Western Road corridor. One nice thing that, give credit where credit's due, Mark Trotter, when we were doing the photometric study, which has to be done by Consumers Energy, we can't do one with Brian Newhoff and give it to them. They require that they are the ones that do the photometric study for the Western Road lighting plan. Mark suggested at the time, hey, how about we not just look at what we have money for in the immediate, but we just do the entire corridor, and then we can talk about phasing in. That way the lights will be uniform as we are able to build them out when funding comes available. So, we took his advice, obviously. He's a smart guy who's always looking out for us. And that ended up being wise, because now we basically just told consumers, okay, go ahead, we need to meet, and we need to meet about phase 1 and 2 of the lighting plan. That later, funding must have became available, and now their wheels are already spinning, knowing what the meetings are going to be about. Streetlights are still expensive, so $250,000 is a lot of money, but this will allow us to get nicer streetlights. What we were thinking about before was going with 4 in the low area here. That's probably the most safety concerning, where there's a drop off and we're putting pedestrians near that drop off. We want to make sure we lit that. The inflation on streetlights is kind of insane. Consumers Energy, in the time we've been talking about these 4 streetlights, which has only been 4 or 5 months, they've raised the price twice on us, just in the time we've been talking about it in the last 4 months.
What's the price on 4 streetlights?
It depends on the kinds of streetlights you get. Originally, we were going with the cheapest, which was a carbon fiber pole, and then the heads on them were the ones that they use in Hot Hollows, so they had a black head, a little more of a downtown feel. Now, what we will probably do is the streetlights that you'll see when you go to, and again, we haven't determined this, but what we're looking at is going with the ones that you see at Eastwood Town Center, where they have what kind of concrete base and they're galvanized steel, and Eastwood Town Center, they have the double head. We still can't afford those double heads, just for everyone knows, those double heads are something like $4,000, like they're insane. But we'll probably go with a single head that's a couple steps above the one we were looking at before. The benefit to that is they're not as easily tipped over. Like if you look at the entrance of Somerset, car or trailer will nail those and will be laying a lot, and then we have to call consumers again to come out. So when we're dealing with that, that'll be nice. The galvanized ones can also have flags and other decorations mounted to them, so that'll be kind of cool for placemaking and events that come up in the future. And we're just trying to create a more aesthetically pleasing corridor, which, you can argue if that's warranted or not. I think from the planning side, and maybe my opinion is biased, but I think it is. I think placemaking and a sense of place is important. I think we've talked about a lot about how that township's kind of ill-defined, and I think this will help us define, like, hey, you're somewhere where people care about their community, and you're getting off at the Webster Road exit, and you're coming into like a residential area. It'll help define that.
All that's already built into the current comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
Placemaking and signage.
Yeah, and and thanks for bringing up the science too. A part of that grant is that we'll be looking at our welcome to that township sign preliminary talks with the superintendent. Again, we need to talk to LEAP and figure out how these funds are going to be dispersed, the timeline, all those details, because this will affect all of this. In the meantime, we're kind of a little bit cart before the horse, but we need to get some of this planned out quickly while we can get some prices locked in. And that's always the problem with like public sector projects. I mean, we experienced this when we were doing our sewer project, when we were thinking about Warren Bassman. There was like an impetus to just order a pipe now and put it in a warehouse for 2 years from now when the build actually happens. But then you don't want to order it in case it doesn't go through, which it ended up not. So then it was kind of good that we didn't spend too much money. So it's always that like, which domino should fall first problem. But we're looking at the sign. The thought was to work with some of the former members of the art committee that aren't as involved now, but the former chair of the art committee informed me of the science subcommittee to, put out an RFP, just like we did for the planning consultants, and then having a group of people that are familiar in that area, just like we did with the consultants, to review the RFPs as they come in and say like, hey, we like this sign, we don't like that sign. And then once they pick a consultant, then, kind of curtailing whatever sign design and helping input with the sign design to meet a broader thing that the township hasn't spent a lot of resources in, that I wish they would spend more resources on, which is a marketing strategy for the township. But we don't want to build one sign for $50,000 just 10 years later build a sign that looks completely different. The goal is to do something similar to what Meridian Township did, which is like, you have all of these signs that are consistent, and when you see a Meridian Township welcome sign or a park sign, you know that it's the same municipality you're in. So that's what our goal, at least. Other things going on in the department. Bobby's here tonight. He'll be here for the next meeting as well. Allie is in Europe. She is studying architecture and transportation with MSU for their study abroad summer program. She'll be back in about a month and a half. We like Allie, so we're holding her spot. She's still got about a year left with the 4+1 program, so that's kind of nice on my front because, training interns, it's not like there isn't a time investment in them. So if we're able to keep them longer, that's always beneficial to us. Bobby recently graduated with his undergraduate degree. So he's sticking with us through this summer, and we're kind of upping his hours pretty significantly right now and putting him on some of our more of our record retention side of things, so we can see how that side goes. Because as we heard tonight, record retention is key, and it's one of those unsung things that government has to do that takes up a large amount of time, but it's not like you get any credit for doing it well until a lawsuit comes and you avoid it, and then you get a lot of credit. But then hopefully that day never comes, And then he's helping out with some of our building department stuff too, so you can see, how these come into the building phase of things. Because just because a development gets approved here and with the board, after that happens, there's usually about 6 or 7 months of internal review that still goes on after the fact. So that's kind of what's going on with the department. It's been super busy. Bobby's holding me pretty stressed out today. We're really gearing up where people are like, hey, it's warm out, and I should have built whatever I planned on building like a month ago, and I'm going to call up and I better get that permit like tomorrow. So we're dealing with a lot of that, so that's been fun. But yeah, we got a couple of ZBA meetings coming up. Mark probably got the email. We got one coming this month. Packet will go out on Thursday. We got one next month lined up as well that we, again, because of noticing and how that all works, we weren't able to get for this month, so we got them for next month. So look out for that one on the packet for that one put together yet. But kind of exciting times, as you know, we don't get too many ZPA, so being two back to back,
That makes 3 this year.
So far.
Yeah.
I'll be taking next week off, but I will be at the ZBA meeting still. So, if you guys try to get with me next week, just call my cell, still pick up, and if I don't pick up, it's because I'm behind the later, so I didn't my phone go off.
Well, please avoid
I appreciate John saying that, but it's
somebody's on vacation unless it's a dire emergency.
I'm just gonna be home doing tile work and stuff.
Well, I know, but you're on vacation. It's not supposed to be a working Bath Township vacation.
Oh yeah, the other thing that it's not necessarily the planning department because I'm in the planning department. I'll just say too, I had some Giago money left. I don't like leaving money on the table, so I'm back in college. Second masters, I started that yesterday. So
Good for you.
CMU. I wanted to go to the state, but they had because it would have been nice because it's so close, but.
CMU just has a lot of programs that are more geared towards a full-time, non-free insurance student, and state agencies don't really, they gear towards more of the traditional student, so. But it's a public administration, so.
Should be interesting.
Yeah. Future superintendent?
I don't think so. Maybe hopefully bigger department. I really like dealing with the planning side of things, this is all very interesting to me, but if somebody came to me about like some HR personnel issues, like who cares? And I'll probably get fired. So I don't know if I'm gonna go that route. All right, that's all I got.
That's all you got? All right, I don't see any public, and there's no trustee report. Commission, anybody on the commission got anything? Nothing? Did anybody get the little postcard from MDOT about the transportation meeting at the Marriott? No, you didn't? Did you get a one?
Is it MDOT or was it the transportation bonanza?
Oh, I bet it was.
Yeah, it's a transportation bonanza.
Yeah, MDOT's part of that usually though.
Yeah, for sure, yeah, they'll be.
But I think somebody ought to at least attend, I don't know, is that something you'd be interested in, George?
Yes, if you could give me that info, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can get it to them.
Okay. I think it'd be nice if somebody would attend. I also think it would be nice if a couple of you would go inspect the East Lansing storage thing. There's a lot of drainage issues there, a lot of erosions going on. Their past record with us is not good as far as following up on what they said they are going to do. I personally would have to vote no on this project at the present time because as far as I'm concerned, they should fix the drainage they've already got problems with before they have another project that's going to have a problem.
We have like a formal process by which there is, and we just had a conversation about ex parte communication.
Yeah.
And so, suggesting that, a couple of us go out there and listen. They would come back and report in a formalized way.
Well, I went out there today. I spent about an hour out there and looking around and seeing what they were doing. And I think it would be wise if a couple of you had the time to do it to see, because I've really got a lot of concerns. I know Mark's got some. He's actually had a storage unit there for quite some time.
Since they opened.
And
But again, you don't have to go into the fenced area to see any of this. So it's all public. You can walk down that road, park, and walk around and see. You don't have to see them at all.
Are you referring to storage unit? That's a conflict of interest, right?
No.
Or something?
No, it has nothing, the place flooded badly. My first unit probably was 12 inches of water. Okay? They moved us, took care of any issues, no problems there, helped dry things out, helped move. I chose to go make sure, as you all know, if you face north, you've got a slope coming down from your unit. Not a problem with water, because the guys that face to the south, the water's going downhill, it comes right through your unit. And there is some leakage, but not as bad as it was. Everything in my unit's up on a pallet anyway, but so I've got a couple inches.
So is the drainage an issue with the second parcel?
It's the north parcel,
But
and
it's not.
all that water from up above is coming down.
Up above meaning?
Where the retail
unit and everything there. And if they put that much cement in roof
surface.
impervious surfaces, that's more water. And he mentioned that the cement worker people, that water was going into their unit on their property. And yes, they made some tiles and they've actually have the water going down underneath the ground now. But if it rains, you don't want to go there. The water is a problem.
So can I say something real quick?
just given what I think Commissioner Alberti was bringing up and what we heard tonight, I mean, we're talking all this in an open meeting now, which is fine. I don't have any ethical qualms about the conversations having, because being very transparent with how everybody feels.
That's why I brought it up.
But one thing that I think I can help with is if commissioners do have experience that's pertinent to the review, you guys could always, and see, I'm just trying to, you guys can tell me how we do this here. But one thing that I think would be helpful is, like, for example, like, Commissioner Greener, if you typed up and emailed me what your experiences were, I can make a section in the staff report that says, like, commissioners, like, site experience, or commissioners' thoughts, or commissioners' site inspection comments, and just put it in the staff report. That way it's in the packet, it's on the public record, it's FOIA-able, and all you are working from the same base of information. If that sounds good.
That sounds excellent.
So, first, did he not say tonight that that they corrected the issues? Did I misunderstand, or he said that? Okay.
I heard that, and I went,
Yeah.
Okay, well, as far as you know, because at any of the sites that we get, we should be looking at individually, whether we go, I mean, you were there today, I was there yesterday.
Okay, good. I'm glad you were.
And he might have been the day before. But we're not all, when I go there, sometimes I want to call someone, hey, can you go with me, like another commissioner, because it's not just looking through my eyes.
As long as it's not more than 3 of you.
Right.
And,
But we bring that back to the board, I brought it back to the board today, if there's something that was pertinent that I picked up yesterday, which I did mention, like, you know, there is a road right there, we did talk about all the water that's gonna be created from these roof lines. Is there, what's gonna run on Oxford's property there? It's right on that road, right?
Right.
yeah.
That design that we had in front of us showed it was gonna be right on the road. He said they were gonna capture it and put it into a drain. So if it is all captured, if it does all work properly, then, you know, that, I'm okay with it. Especially if there was some emergency conditions put in there that would capture it if something did happen. But, well, now knowing what Mark said, the next time I go out there, now I can look at the site and now I'm gonna look for some different things that I looked for the first time out there.
Yeah, maybe go out when it's raining, but again, just going back to the point of a consistency, right? With not just this development with the maximum, but same way, same time, every applicant, that's where the, hey, give me your comments in writing, I'll put it in the staff report, we'll do it the same way every time.
Well, so right now we have, what, three community members, or commission members who have gone to the site and have a visual, impression, and with various degrees of expertise on water flow or terrain, right? And then we have 3 others that have no experience, and is it common sense, or is it more complex than that?
Well, for me, it's probably more complex, but I could say water runs downhill. And if you have a building sitting there and water's running downhill and there's trenches there, obviously there's still a problem, and obviously it's not.
Well, and we'll also have the agency review from the drain commissioner. If this body wanted to have the drain commissioner present to speak at the public hearing, that's obviously something I can arrange. I think John Morrison will be, so not it wouldn't be Phil Haas, but John Morrison will be the guy who wants to be here. He would have no problem coming to this meeting and talking about what he's seen. It's a balance against, I think it's good to have the full picture. I think it's good to have you guys' opinion. I think it's good to have his opinion.
Oh, I do too.
And as long as you're not getting Angie Yeager's warm cookie, like, review process.
I want to know how much the cookies were worth $1 value.
What's the authority there to deal with such a situation, though?
well,
What can we do?
my point was that we,
No, I mean, like,
it was an approved site. And then they realized that the engineers had not done their job to get that water to where they wanted
So
it.
their engineers plus
They
ours.
sued their engineers. That's what I understood.
Yeah.
So there was also testified.
No, they were talking very publicly about suing the engineers. Right now, no lawsuit's been filed.
They were talking about lawsuit with Spicer, but
I don't know if the lawsuit will be filed in the future. I don't know that much.
The design got through and the water problem was there, and they have worked on it. And you see that if you had gone in early versus today, it is better.
It's better. Well, so, I mean, right now we're in Commissioner Hans, right?
Yes.
So you're opening up, you know, new business, old business, and you're also, you know, letting us know what your votes are gonna be. I feel like that might be problematic for.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I think their track record, as far as I'm concerned, is not good.
I mean, at the appropriate time,
It is
leverage evidence, and bring that to the table for us to make informed decisions.
And, you know, if you feel that's not inappropriate on my behalf, take ownership for it. I am. That's
There's
fine.
a simple solution here, if they have an engineering grading plan. I mean, it's pretty simple. There are contours like we did here.
Commissioner Alpert, just want, I think he's just saying, like, hey, we're past that point on the agenda.
Yeah, move on, it's fine. Well, we can move on.
I would like to thank those that work behind the scenes as usual, from the boards to the people that answer the phones. So I really enjoy being able to call in here and have a person talk to me and direct me where I need to go.
I want to commend our road committee and members for monitoring and maintaining our roads. We also asked a question about chloride application. As we're in the depths of dust season. And I had a question previously on 2 applications versus 3 applications. And I'm pretty sure last year we got 2 applications. But historically, we've always gotten single pass on, right around this time, Memorial Weekend, a double pass around 4th of July, and then another single pass in August or September. We didn't get that last single pass.
I think we're due real soon.
I think though what is coming for last year, if I remember correctly, Doug was at a board of trustee meeting, and that same question came up. I don't know if it was from you or somebody else, but they said they got a grant last year.
Yeah, they did.
Allowed them to do an extra application. But we never got it. Oh, we never got that third application? No, I think all the applications were on Drumheller because of all the truck traffic. Well, the application on Drumheller, a lot of that is subsidized by Slade. He pays for it. It's not, he gives the money to the road commission. So, and the question I have is, are we on slate for 3 applications this year?
I would have to look at the records to be sure, so I can't answer that question legitimately, honestly. Drumheller is, and again, I really should not speak to this exactly, but how it used to be, and I didn't look at it close enough yet, but we do have different application standards for Drumheller. It's a bigger, higher concentration, and I think it does get an extra application.
So, but for
And
the
last year, Consumers Energy paid for it.
or the remainder of the county or township,
Right.
there's always 3 applications. And so we didn't get the 3rd application last year.
I'll look into that.
Thank you. Very much appreciate the work you're doing. And township staff.
Thanks for buttering me up.
Well, in terms of township staff, it's huge accomplishments in the grantsmanship that he is doing. And so that brings huge benefits to our township.
The township, I will say, is all the boards, past, present, have always been very proactive about supporting our infrastructure. And, you know, we've been on the board, when I was first on the board many years ago, we only had a couple $100,000 to do all the township roads. And it was, you know, what do we really, how do you really want to spend? You have to balance it between dirt or gravel and asphalt. And you have subdivisions that you can't do that are going bad. You can't tax them and, you know, pay them pay twice because they, you know, live in a subdivision. So, you know, it's really quite tricky. And our board has spent a ton of money, close to $1 million last year, and close to $1 million this year for our roads. It's tremendous. And you don't have to go very far.
Great.
Pardon?
COVID relief funds have been great.
Yes, but you don't have to go very far to time outside our township to, hit a pothole. And even in our township right now, because the roads got tore up this last year. Thank you very much, Phil.
I think the road commissioner, there's one section of road, I don't know who's looking to maintain it. It's a section off Senior Court, goes back in where the cottages are. I was looking at the master deed for the cottages. The master deed for the cottages includes only where the duplexes are. The intersection of Hawk Hollow Drive and Senior Court, where it is there are about 3 or 4 single homes there that are not part of the homeowners association for the cottages. But they're also beyond the intersection the county's maintaining. So I don't know who maintains that little short section. If anybody does.
It's not part of Hawk Hollow, the Hawk Hollow main road.
No.
To the cottages.
Yeah, you go straight down Hawk Hollow between the cottages
Okay.
and Senior Court is off to the left there.
Okay.
There's a section from that intersection to where the cottages starts. There's 3 or 4 single-family homes there that are not part of the cottages, but they are. It just looks like something maintained by the county. I don't know who's doing it.
Good question. I don't know.
Which road?
Is that something you're asking Miles to research, or?
The county needs to research there. Somebody does.
I'll look at how that's going. I'll figure it out.
So you're gonna follow up on that, George?
Yes.
Thank you. Anybody got anything else?
George's homework. Thanks for comments.
George, is,
Appreciate you, George.
George has got a great relationship with the county road commission for some reason. I don't know how he does it. He does much better.
They just do their job, and I don't really do it.
I've seen you pick up your phone and call someone, and there's a truck down the road, an hour later.
That's probably not true.
Well, it seems like that, so.
Probably is.
I don't think so.
Anybody got anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Adjourn. Thank you.
Support?
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.